All right, let me go ahead and change my camera. Hello, everyone. This is the after show of the debate with Don K Preston. I have a few people on. If those of you guys that would like to join the link, let me go ahead and drop it inside the chat. And let me see here. Jacob, what's up, man? Bro, hop on the live stream. Yeah, that intro was actually with Nick Debs. I had him on my podcast earlier. It's funny, I always forget to change the intro. You guys, I dropped the link to the StreamYard. Tune in. You can go ahead and hop on the live stream. I will put you on. If there's a few, Richie, I see you as well. If there are a few of you guys that would like to come on the stream, I can't put on everybody, I don't think, but I would like to. So please come on. Jacob, I see you, man. I see that you challenged me a little bit. You know, you brought up some stuff, which is cool. Jacob, you know, I consider you a good friend, a brother. And at the end of the day, hey, at the end of the day, what can I say? I'm all for it. Nick Debs, you're more than welcome to come on. You guys, I posted the live stream. You're more than welcome to come on. I'm willing to do this all night. I just want to say this was a great debate. You know, I wanted to respect Don as an elder. I think Don did a wonderful job. Don is a veteran debater, and I absolutely respect Don. What can I say? You know, I did my best to bring my points across. I do believe that my points are important. I do believe that my points are very, very pertinent to this discussion. The nature of the resurrection. I got objective ethics on. What's up, bro? How are you? I just got your email right before the debate.
Yes.
Man. How are you? What's happening,
Yeah,
man?
yeah, brother, bro. You were cooking. You were absolutely solid. I didn't catch the whole thing, so I don't want to. I don't know if there was some stuff that I missed, but from what I saw, you were absolutely cooking. I thought your closing statement was extremely impactful, bro. I guarantee you that people are going to walk away from that stream if they're preterists, full preterists, or whatever, and they're going to be thinking about that, bro. You gave them something to chew on. No doubt about that.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Like I said, man, I'm just trying to get into the brass tacks of it all. If you saw the whole debate, you know, there's a lot of like exegesis going on. And I did do some exegesis. You know, I brought up 1 Thessalonians 4, did my best to press Don. You know, I brought up the change in mortality, but I was pretty much bringing up like the experiential factor of this. Like, how did the saints experience the change in mortality, the most historical event in human history? And at the end of the day, man, what can I say? I take my hat off to Don and everybody else who was participating. And at the end of the day, hey, you know what? I did my best. And I'm hoping that somebody can deconvert, see my arguments, and make some life choices that will benefit them. So thank you, man, for tuning in.
Well, I think I didn't like I said, I didn't see the whole debate. I did when I popped in. The first thing I asked is how's Tristan doing, and some people were saying, "Oh, you're doing great," and then people in Don's camp were like, "Oh, Tristan's being so rude and just attacking Don." And you just don't seem like that kind of dude to me. You seem like a straight up dude, a solid guy for sure. And I know I obviously don't know you that well, but I've been very impressed with you from what I've seen so far, and I've actually spoken very highly of you. So I don't think you let me
Thank you,
down.
man.
From what I saw, you were very humble. You're close. You were very gracious. Your last little outro or whatever you want to call that was very gracious. So, I thought you. I mean, as far as I could tell, you handled yourself like a gentleman. You know your shit. There's nobody can say you don't know your shit, bro.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Nick, thank you for coming on. You guys, Nick is actually a full preterist. Jacob Kilburn, he's a full preterist. I have many full preterists that are my friends. Bro, I don't take none of this personal. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is just theology business. And, and I don't take it as personal, you guys, because I'm no longer believers, so it's like I don't take it that personal, but I just want to thank each and every one of you guys for coming on the live stream, for tuning in. I'm doing this for you guys. I don't get paid for this. I'm not asking for $1. I just want to represent the preterist community and those in our Facebook group. And for those who are interested on these topics, that's it. I'm just trying to do it for that one person, that one soul. And I think Don did a great job. I think Don is just being in there with them, being in the ring with them. There was no surprises. I do believe that I silenced him many times, at least 3 times. I do believe I silenced him. But at the end of the day, people in his camp are going to say he won. People in my camp are going to say, and that's just how debates are, so.
Yeah, I heard that Derek was cutting you in on that super chat money and that you were going to make some money off of this.
No, I ain't making a penny, man. I ain't making a penny, man. I am definitely not making a penny.
Yeah.
Look at what Jack Shadow said. I still don't know how the first century saints experienced the rest.
Yeah,
exactly. Dude, Dude, this is why I was bringing this up. This is what he said. I mean, I'm not making stuff up, you know, and this is what led me out. I kid you not. Oh, man, I got to put him on here, you guys. You have to understand. This guy right here is literally a killer. Jacob Kilburn. He's a full preterist,
What's up, Jacob?
MMA fighter, MMA instructor. He was actually very influential in bringing me into full preterism when I had this theology page. Jacob, what's up, man? Dude, I love you, bro. I love the challenges. I love the super chats. But I love it, man. How are you doing?
Good. Yeah. You know, I gotta represent the team. You left the team, bro.
I know. But I still consider myself a full preterist. I'm still a full preterist in my own version.
Yeah, maybe not an orthodox, but yeah, I mean, obviously we're friends. I think a lot of you, and I know you work with you work with kids, and you care about truth, and you've arrived at what you believe, and I can obviously see how you got there. I'm not there yet, but I wrestle with a bunch of stuff, and I have my whole life. So I think it was good for people to honestly. It was good for you and Don, who have been going at it for a while, to step up and say, "Hey, let's do this." And it got a little bit chaotic at times. And yeah, I think you could interpret it different ways to say different people won. But obviously, he dealt more with Bible, and you dealt more with like the logic and what you did make some references.
I dealt with his literature. I wanted to deal with his literature, and that's the thing. Many full preterists don't read his literature. So when I was bringing up Elisha's servant, for example, many full preterists have never even heard that analogy. And when I asked Don Jacob, who brought up Elisha's servant tapping into the unseen realm when they experienced the change in immortality? Who did that? He stated that he's the one who brought that up. So then I said, okay, then I'm going to bring up Elijah. When Elijah,
yeah, I actually thought, that point was super good. That actually goes good with what me and you were talking about how potentially more of the Ed Stevens view. If he's bringing up Elisha, like, why would he not take it like Elijah, who literally got taken up? Like,
exactly.
Yeah, I thought that was the best point of the whole thing, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, look, what can I say? I mean, being in there with them, I mean, there was no surprises, but I do believe that many times, and I mean this with all sincerity, that when Don was saying, "Are you finished?" Like, I literally was silencing him because he didn't know what to say when I was asking him these things.
I didn't take it like that. I think he was kind of getting fed up of the interrupting, and so he was like really trying to see if you were done. He was kind of being
the day.
This is a guy that has done like tons of formal public debates, so he's very used to like the. And I know you come from like a really high level of academia too, but yeah, I think he's used to, hey, I step up to the podium while my opponent is sitting front row. I talk, or we're both sitting on the stage and I have the microphone. So just kind of the nature of the online venue, plus the way that you typically do things. I mean, I don't know if anybody knows, like, it started with Instagram and now it's YouTube. You've always been about the discussion, less about the debate. So that's just not your style of you talk, I'll be quiet, and then the moderator tells me when I can speak and I'm past the microphone. Kind of your always when you were a Christian, and now as I don't know what you would call it, an anti-theist, you've always been about the discussion side of things. And less about okay, it's your turn to talk. And I think for somebody like Don, who has most of his stuff is the formal public debate where it's very controlled and very ordered. This new YouTube stream live discussion thing where we're both on screen, it's just it's different. So that is something that if you guys ever do it again, because there's plenty of stuff that didn't get covered, there's plenty of stuff you guys can make follow-up videos on.
Plenty of stuff
that would have to get probably more clearly lined up, but I don't know that you'll get a Don Preston or a William Bell or anybody that's a little bit used to just more of the standing up at the podium at the church type to do a discussion type thing. So I think that's where his frustration was coming from. But it was funny to watch you guys
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
it
at
was
one
funny.
point Derek was like, "Guys, please, please."
I know. Hey, objective ethics. You want to say something?
No, I just listened. I was gonna. This is hilarious because I'm in the middle of cooking some people on a Discord right now about historicity of the Bible and stuff. So listen to you guys go at all this stuff. Listen to you guys go at it, just cracking me up right now. It's hilarious. Yeah, I think the more you can do to kind of chip away at this terrible it's just a dangerous religion. It causes people to think dangerous things and cause a lot of harm, in my opinion. So I think he's just slowly chipping away at people. Is you're doing you're really doing the Lord's work, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh man, thank you so much. And,
Well, I mean, I
like
would
I
definitely
said,
disagree with that, but
of course, I know. Part of the beauty of this country, right, is that we could have disagreements, and still remain civilized, right? And listen, if somebody came to me, and told me, hey, listen, you all of your friends, your loved ones, they're gonna die, or you're gonna die, I would say, kill me. If it means that my friends and my loved ones, that would include you guys. So at the end of the day, I often say I still have the heart of a Christian, in the sense that I have this altruistic sense, this selfless sense to serve humanity. And really, man, what can I say? It's an opportunity of a lifetime. Don hit me up. He texted me, or he wrote me on Facebook and said, hey, let's have the debate. Even though I was challenging him, he told me he wasn't going to debate me. He wanted me to pay $15K to Bart Ehrman and then pay him $15K. It's on his YouTube stream. I thought, okay, he's not going to debate me. Then he messaged me, so let's have the debate. I said yes. So at the end of the day, what can I say? I'm honored and privileged. And look, I'm just glad that I put on some sort of entertainment. I brought up some points, and like I said, I brought up this a lot. I brought up this stuff right here because I'm telling you, this is what led me out. I'm thinking, well, then they had to have been like rejoicing and dancing and all that. And we heard what Don stated. As a matter of fact, I think right here, this is what really got me. I thought it was crazy about how Don walked right into the question about his wife, just kind of blatantly gave the crazy statement about him still having hope and all that. And I'm telling you, man, if I saw my wife, I'm not married, but if I saw my wife eating my child, I'd be suicidal. I'd probably take my life. I wouldn't. Who cares if I'm vindicated? I wouldn't. I wouldn't
so
care.
that's where I think the rubber meets the road, because that is the Christian response, is to that you have hope regardless of circumstances, because anyone who lives and believes in me will never die. So in essence, everything is good. God's in control. It's all good. Everything that happens is for the glory of him and for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purposes, even if it means you're slaughtered or raped or you're thieved from, or your house is pillaged or whatever. It's happening for the glory of Christ and for the good of those who love God. And that is the Christian worldview. And I'm the guy that's over here going, yeah, the Holocaust happened for the glory of Christ. There's no other way to say that without being a non-believer. So either you admit that everything that happens in human history is ordained by the all-knowing, all-good God, and it happens for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose, or you live in a random, purposeless, chaotic void where there is no structure, control, or meaning to things that happen. So his response was very consistent with what any Christian should say. So I wasn't shocked by it at all, actually.
Well,
Now,
let me
it
let
may
me
be
There's
say this.
there's
erroneous.
another side to that though. There's no side to that. You don't have to just limit it to those two options. You could actually accept that we're just human beings, that we're highly evolved monkeys, and that we need to learn from our mistakes and look back at history and say this was really terrible, and we better make sure whatever we got to do to make sure this never happens again. You don't have to bring
Right,
God
but
into that at all.
that could be God ordaining that to happen for you to learn that. So like with the evolutionary, the progression, like Tristan talking about morality being progressive, and
Yeah,
I'm totally on board with that, and God could be
sure.
the one orchestrating the entire thing.
He can. That's why I'm not an atheist. I still believe that there could be some sort of deity or simulation out there. Okay. That's why I'm not an atheist. I'm not trying to say that it's solely human evolution, but we have evolved even within Christianity. We have evolved. 1,000 years from now, a human society is going to be different, drastically different. That's my prediction.
You're
Nick,
just questioning the
yeah,
biblical
yeah, I'm
God.
questioning
Yeah.
the biblical. So it's like, I could
Yeah.
have said, well, look, God kills children, right? Did he not kill the firstborn of Egypt? Did he not, allow this God could have done something a different way. You know what I mean? Rather than the Roman soldiers besieging Jerusalem. But yeah, go
I
ahead.
do agree with Jacob, though. I feel like you and me have gotten so much further along, like it just by normal conversation, that debates sometimes are just kind of stupid. And I would love to see like a long form conversation, just like a podcast between you two, where I think so much more stuff would get solved or discussed in a more fruitful manner.
If you were able to have a discussion where it's like, hey, we're both friends, and we may walk away from this with the same opinion, but can we talk about it? And if somebody starts to get mad, let's just take a break from that for a second. That could be productive, but that takes an incredible amount of discipline.
Yeah, I mean, Tristan and I have done it a few times now where, I mean, we don't agree, but I feel like sometimes we've even entertained things that I don't think either of us agree with, but just kind of try to discuss it to see, does this fit better? Or, so, you know, I'm looking forward to more conversations like that.
My mother, my father, my family members, my friends, they're still Christians. Okay, so I would die for them. So that's it. You know what I'm saying? I would die for my friends. I would die for my loved ones, you know? So at the end of the day, even if I believe that we go back to non-existent, you know what I mean? Like we die, we go back to non-existence, all that I have, and I have no hope of heaven. Look, at the end of the day, there are a lot of things that I can't explain, and neither can any of us really, truly. And that's why I'm agnostic. That's why I'm not atheist. I'm agnostic. Agnostic just simply means you're just unsure. You don't know. And I think that's okay, you know, but look, what can I say? I had an opportunity of a lifetime. You know, I debated a legend in Christianity, in my opinion. He's a legend, in my opinion. He took full preterism to the highest peak.
I agree.
And at the end of the day, there are other fish to fry. Jacob, I want to debate the Black Hebrew Israelites. I had a debate with his name is Captain Tazarak. Derek said that I could debate him on his podcast. I hope Derek will allow me to.
I can help you beat him.
Thank you, man. I want to touch base with you. Objective ethics. What was your name again, bro? Was it Daniel?
Yeah, that's right.
Joseph.
That's right, Daniel. Daniel, what's up, bro? You've been silent, man. By all means.
No, I'm just trying. I just don't want to be rude. I don't want to cut you guys off because I know a lot of this is your guys' kind of in your wheelhouse. But I will agree with the sentiment from the other gentleman too. No, I got you, family. No, I agree with the other sentiment, like from Jacob and Nick and what everybody's saying, because I do a lot of this where, in fact, you and I are talking about having a conversation, and I do this. You know, I get involved in Christian channels, and we just have a very polite discussion. You know, I prefer not to do the whole formal debate thing because, like I told other people, you know, I've watched a bunch of debates, and I have not yet seen one single time of the years I've been doing this where I've seen the guy who technically lost the debate go, you know what? At the end of this thing, you're right, buddy. I was wrong. I mean, I should have changed. You know what I mean? You're never gonna fucking 100%. See that. So they say, well, it's for the audience and stuff. But the thing about that is, when you get into these debates online and you look at the chat, bro. I mean, Nick and Jacob can tell you I'm not lying to you, bro. The chat was already decided who'd won that debate 5 minutes into it. Oh, Tristan's cooking right now. Tristan's cooking. Oh, Don's killing him right now. Yeah, they could have done that poll before you guys even got there. I swear to God. You know, so that's the debate thing is such a flawed, you know, system. It's interesting, and you can get access as a viewer to a lot of interesting information in the scholarship and stuff. But at the end of the day, the most productive thing is just like what Brother Nick and Brother Jake is saying is you got to just sit down and have a good conversation. Always focus on respect first, and then let things be where they may, you know.
I know, I get it. But you guys, really quickly, I kid you not, this right here, if you look at William Bell.
That was fun too.
They're laughing and they're smiling.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I'm like, oh my God, like, dude, I didn't just make this up. This is on William Bell's freaking website. They're laughing and they're smiling. I'm thinking this is terrible.
I was cracking up at that.
Daniel Rogers was, I don't know if he's still here, but Daniel Rogers, bro, I would love for you to come on. I brought up Daniel Rogers in the debate. You know, Daniel Rogers had said, and I talked with Derek Lambert behind closed doors, and he had stated, yeah, Daniel Rogers has a point. The only acceptable response of the saints would be weeping, just like Jesus did. When he looked at Jerusalem, they'd be weeping. So, like, the only thing to get away from that is to say that Jesus was supposed to return bodily. They were supposed to meet him in the invisible realm, and therefore they're with him. Now, many theologians, I didn't get into the debate, in the debate very much, but many theologians have asked, are we going to feel sad for those who are left behind and when we get raptured, or if we're in heaven and we know that our loved ones are in hell, are we going to be sad about that? Dude, So many theologians, so many Christians from freaking patristic and medieval times have talked about this. And so I'm literally getting to the nature of the resurrection when it comes to the physical saints, the living saints. And, you know, I brought up stuff like this, you guys. I kid you not, it was Jeremy Stoltzfus, former full preterist. He put all of Don's quotes into ChatGPT, and this is what it is. All it was saying was, Don, you need to own it. And I remember I pressed him, are you going to own this? Or are you going to relinquish this? And he didn't do neither. And that's the point.
Put it up to the camera. Put it up to the camera more.
Here you have.
Oh, I thought they were clapping hands.
No, they're over there being glorified.
Yeah.
170 AD. Like, that is what he stated in his debate with Richard Carrier. And there are people who left full preterism. There are literally people. One of them is Lily.
So the other side of that is there's no historical documentation to prove otherwise.
I agree.
On either side,
I agree. And this is why I brought up, dude, look, on Don's book, I brought this up at least 2 times. He was criticizing Ed Stevens, and he had stated it is inappropriate to build a doctrine off of the absence of history. And
right.
so I say that, why did you say that, you know?
Well, he's building a doctrine on the Bible. So that's what he's using to build the doctrine.
That they would be dancing in the streets.
Well,
the Bible never says that.
And this is what I got to in the when I
it's
asked
on page 274, by the way, you guys. It's on page 274 where he criticized Ed Stevens. He says it's inappropriate to attempt to prove a doctrine based on the science of history. I go, then why'd you state that? That's it.
This is why I made the super chat that said, if the flood, the Red Sea crossing, whatever, like Daniel in the lion's den, Paul's conversion on the road to Damascus, the transfiguration, when they saw Jesus' post-resurrected body, and they had the Bible study there where he showed them all the things that were written that concerned him, whatever. There's so many things that are just recorded in the Bible, just as a matter of fact, and these are things that are in the Bible but we don't get any experiential details of what they saw, what they felt. And these are things that are even New Testament, even post-resurrection New Testament, things that we're not given details of. So something that's not even in the Bible, my thing is we can't argue about. I think this is where I side with Don. I think it takes the argument back to, hey, what's the timing? If we can agree on the timing, and if we can agree on and then you go to just the general validity of Scripture. If you believe the Bible is a document that has factual stuff, verifiable authorship, testable and provable things that are prophetic writings, etc., all you're stuck with is the timing aspect, because we don't know. I mean, my God, we don't know what the disciples' lives look like after the book of Acts closed. Like, it's just, there's so much stuff that me and you have said it before when you were on the Christian side, is that we're living in what would we consider the Third Testament period. Because the New Testament is nothing more than a book about the transition period from old to new. But the technical New Testament doesn't even start until the backside of AD 70, if full preterism is legit, which would mean we're living in a sort of Third Testamental period. So I think the entire debate, not to be a jerk, but the entire debate was like, okay, we're arguing about stuff that nobody wrote about, that we don't know.
That's because it didn't happen. See, you can just like what Christopher Hitchens stated. If you can assert it without evidence, it could be dismissed without evidence. If you go to court and you're in a judiciary,
so that goes either way.
That's what I'm trying to say. There's no evidence, so that means you could just open up the Pandora's box and just hang your hat and your faith in your entire life on something that has no evidence. That's terrible.
You know what the evidence was the sign that he was pointing that the temple would be destroyed. And which did happen in that generation. That's evidence.
I agree that happened. But what I'm trying to say is that when they read those texts, and I brought this up in the debate, change to immortality, what was the mental image? We shall meet Christ in the air. It's like this. I should have brought this up in the debate.
We don't know, because the Bible authors didn't tell us what the mental image was.
This is why we appeal to the Greek scholars. And I was asking Don if Paul wanted to communicate, and Mark Smith brought this up in his debate with Don, if Paul wanted to communicate a literal bodily return of Christ, what other Greek words then would he use? How else
Do
would
you
he
suppose
express
it's
it?
do you suppose it's possible that the Bible that's all speculative, even on the of course it's probably stupid to ask you this because you've kind of made the jump, but pretend I'm asking anybody else in the chat. Do you suppose it's possible that like you talk about I'm going to send you the helper, he's going to guide you into all truth, like Don talked about, a certain type of death, a certain type of sin, a certain type of tears, all contextual. Perhaps even the truth that they were guided into, all of it, the perfection of Ephesians 4, where they all came to fullness and stature of Christ. Maybe that's all contextual. And perhaps John, Paul, Peter, when they're writing these apocalyptic things, they don't even know what this is going to look like, and those guys were either dead by the time it happened or they died shortly after. And it's quite possible that they're just like, hey, we believe in Jesus, we lived with him, we walked with him, we tasted, touched, and we were convinced that he was the real deal. We were sure about the timing, but to be honest, maybe none of us know. And maybe there's even letters that were written to the churches going, hey, none of us know what the hell's going to happen.
Maybe,
And those things got
yeah,
scrubbed because we don't know. And this is where I'm the guy that's this is the $230 bottle of scotch that I opened talking, but I'm going, hey, I watched the debate. It didn't affect my faith. I'm just going, we're arguing about stuff that we don't have anything on. Why don't we argue about time statements? Why don't we argue about something else? So would you debate Don on something other than the experiential factor and what was the change in immortality? Because I feel like that's beaten to dead, and you guys are never going to agree on the validity of the point. Would you have
Daniel, I know you haven't spoken in a while, but the reason why I bring that up, you guys, is because he's the one that's challenging dispensation. He's the one that's challenging Christianity. Clothes left behind. Don is the one who literally opens up with in his book, clothes left behind, cars crashing into one another. I say then meet him at his match. You give us a movie and tell us what happened. And he had stated, even if his wife was in the city gates, what would he be doing? Would he be dancing? That's what makes it so unacceptable. And the fact
Let me
that
throw
there's
this at you.
on this. Go ahead. Daniel, I know you want to talk.
Let Derek in this chat. I've never interacted with that guy. Let him in.
Bro, I would love for Derek to come in, but go ahead, Nick.
I mean, so I know everybody always throws out that term, like the already but not yet. I mean, is it possible that it's like we're kind of thinking about it almost more backwards, that they had the yet and they got it early, but it like all that was left was the vindication, but everything that we're all talking about actually did happen at Pentecost. That like we got it, but it wasn't yet, but it came early, and the only thing was left for everybody else to see the sign that what we are the true. This did really happen. It is over. The new headship is Christ. Moses is done, and it's like every Christian knew, but everybody else didn't know, and it was just for them to be like, okay, they were right, and we already got it, because most people think it's like the opposite, like already but not yet. There was still something yet to come, and I'm thinking maybe no, there wasn't really anything yet to come. We got it early, and there was just this one last bit, for them to see.
To take a page out of Don's book, he calls and again, I have disagreements with everybody, so it's not like Don's my savior. Jesus is, but Don calls the already but not yet the almost but not quite, in the sense of in the mid 50s, when we're writing all these letters and epistles and compiling the New Testament texts, you're essentially living in the fully realized okay, how do I put this? It's like me, it's like if you tell me, hey man, I'm gonna buy the car from you, but I don't get paid till Friday. I'm like, all right, go ahead and drive the car, and when you get paid, I know you're good for it. I think the argument is, like the text that he was citing, you have come to Mount Zion, that there was nothing else to They were already there. They were at the
I
fullness
know,
of experience.
Daniel. I
But
want you to say something really quickly. Right after
Yeah.
I say this, Daniel, I know you've been waiting, but when he had brought that up, you guys, he said you have come to Mount Zion. How did they come there? I said through the new birth experience. That's how they got there.
Yeah,
They were
so I
baptized in
think it's
water. They had the Holy Spirit. So metaphorically, spiritually, it still involves some sort of physical, real reaction. How did they come to Mount Zion? They came through the new birth experience. They were baptized in water.
I would point you back to the Apostle John, where he says God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit. He didn't say God is flesh, and those who worship him must worship him with carnal things. So I think the experience is something that is absolutely nothing that those carnal senses can obtain, and it
No,
is.
but Jacob, listen. When people receive the Holy Spirit, when they receive the Holy Spirit, it involved their undivided attention. They were speaking in tongues. They were prophesying. Just like when people convert to Christianity today, what happens? They cry. They feel overwhelming. They confess with their mouth. They get
It didn't
baptized
happen.
in
That
physical.
well, that I can tell you that didn't happen for me, and I'm the guy that's a cessationist, and I disagree. So the whole tongues and all, like I'm
Okay, but remember when I brought up when people pray, they close their eyes, they fold their hands, and they rock back and forth. You see what I'm saying? This is a mystical, spiritual experience.
Yeah,
This
and
is something the Jews still do to this day. The Jews still do this to this day.
I'm
You
the
see what I'm
guy that
saying?
can go into and this is really terrible. I'm also the guy that says I don't have a sin problem. That was taken away from me while I drink the scotch and profess faith in Christ.
Well, I don't think that's a sin. So
I'm saying I don't think I have a sin issue. I don't do things to hurt people. I build up my community. I try to live exactly and be the man that God can be, and to get better each day. But just because I'm a work in progress doesn't mean that I'm actively ripping boards off of the house that God is building. So I don't have a sin issue, and at the same time, I'm the guy that can go into. I mean, I haven't been to church in a long time because every time I'm there, I'm sitting around going, "None of you know Jesus. You're all really good actors. You're here getting some sort of a dopamine, oxytocin, like hit, but none of you have any clue what's going on in this book or in this faith." So all of those books about the neuroscience and the spiritual stuff tied into the physical, I'm the guy that's going, yeah, those people are the same people that convinced themselves they saw Bigfoot. I'm a believer in Jesus.
No, they're not, bro. Dude, the
Bro,
heck no, bro. These guys are not saying that, bro. These
I'm
guys are doing
telling you,
empirical data, empirical studies.
I'm
They're trying
telling
to
you,
support God's existence.
all the people you went to, bro. Okay, so Tristan, you were a minister in a apostolic Pentecostal, forgive me if I'm messing up the terminology, but
No.
sort of a background. And there was a time, I'm guessing, because you would have had to say that you had the Spirit, that you would have been able to use some sort of a gift of tongues. And now you would say, looking back, going, that was just my brain so convinced of the faith that I was doing it, but it's not demon possession. And now you're the guy that's going, well, it wasn't the Holy Spirit. I just was so convinced of it that I did it. In the same way, people see a bear and they would go to the death saying that they saw a Bigfoot. I'm telling you, there are people that really are convinced that they're in the faith and they're just so out of touch with reality. They've believed in the Jesus that's coming back in the future, which means they have a relationship with an imaginary. I mean, they might as well be on psilocybin. So I don't know.
Daniel,
Dude, let me jump in here real quick because I got to, before it gets too far away, I just want to just really take a minute, and especially if there's anybody in the chat like Derek, if he's still floating around there, lurking back there, because Richard Carrier has been a huge influence on my life as far as scholarship goes, and I was really glad to see you guys actually bring him up, because I think I mentioned to you guys I'm actually doing a debate right now about the historicity of the Bible. And the specific conditions of the debate are about how the archaeological record, whether it matches up with the Bible and whatnot. And I chose the book of Daniel to disprove basically the historicity of the Bible and the accuracy, because Daniel hacks that whole thing up so bad with Darius, and the whole his version of the history just doesn't match up calling Nebuchadnezzar the father of Belshazzar, and he just messes the whole thing up. So we have the so much archaeological evidence from that period to be able to really address that. And Richard Carrier, I'm actually leaning heavily on his scholarship initially. I've done my own legwork since then and cited the peer-reviewed journals and all this other stuff talking about that period. But Richard Carrier, man, he's the man. So I was really glad to see that people are kind of giving him his flowers. And speaking of flowers, man, when you had Justin from Deconstruction Zone come on there with the super chat, bro, that was hilarious. That guy is the man. He is absolutely the GOAT. You know, so when he's giving you your flowers, Tristan, you've made it, bro. You've made it.
Oh,
hey,
man,
quick
thank
question
you.
for you, Daniel. Have you heard that potentially that Darius is just like a term for maybe like a Persian king?
Yeah,
Have you
you're
heard that
talking about a
argument?
throne. Yeah, you're talking about a throne name. Yeah, I've actually had this debate for probably I don't know, the last 15 years. I haven't heard it. There's not a single new argument that's been presented for it. All that stuff is completely, no offense, but it's total garbage. And the whole purpose,
I don't
the
really know.
specific,
Yeah, I'd
yeah,
be
the
curious to
specific,
hear your arguments.
yeah, well, the specific conditions of this debate are that in order to make a claim, you have to have archaeological evidence that backs up your claim. So every single claim that I made 4 claims over 3 bullet points. You know, I talked. There's no Darius the Mede. Darius was not the son of Xerxes. I mentioned the other two. I think Belshazzar was not the son of Nebuchadnezzar, and Belshazzar was never a king. You know, those were the 4 claims that I made, and I've got all the archaeological evidence. The Behustum Stele, the Van inscription. I've got the lineage by Belshazzar's own mother. I can't remember what it's called. It's a really weird name. But she actually wrote their family line. I've got the history. We've got the archaeological evidence of how Belshazzar actually even is on the throne, how Nabonidus is even on the throne because it was part of a coup that Nabonidus' grandfather took the throne away from Nebuchadnezzar. There's literally nothing whatsoever to indicate there's any blood ties. And so all these arguments they're coming back with was things like you said, well, Darius might be a throne name. People are trying to say that maybe Darius was actually what they called Cyrus the Great, because if you really read Daniel, there's actually stuff, you know, they credit Daniel for taking over, you know, conquering Babylon, but it was really Cyrus the Great. The one thing I would say, if you're looking to make that argument, if I'm going to help out my opponent here, and just, you know, it's just to let you guys know that technically speaking, Darius was in the, probably a general, we think, in the army. So when Cyrus took Babylon, technically you could make the argument that Darius was involved in that. You know what I'm saying? So you could make an argument about that. But the point is that if you're going to make any of those claims, you got to back it up with archaeological evidence per the rules of this particular debate. And there isn't a scrap of evidence. So this thing had gone on for like 4 or 5 days now on this Discord channel. And it's a debate about archaeological evidence. I'm debating about 20 or 30 Christians at the same time by myself here right now. There's hundreds of comments in this debate. And still, 4 or 5 days later, I'm the only person that's posted a single piece of archaeological evidence in a debate about archaeological evidence. So it's just hilarious how these arguments
that's
fall apart.
crazy.
It's all just assertions, you know. And I'm not saying you're trying to do that right now, but is it possible that it was?
I don't know anything, honestly.
Yeah.
I just happened to hear that like like a throwaway line one time. So yeah,
it is. Yeah, it is. No, it is an assertion. It is an assertion that apologists are trying to make is that it was a throne name, but we have absolutely no evidence that Cyrus the Great was using his throne name. And where did this throne name come from? You know, if it was, because it would have to come before Darius, obviously. You know what I mean? Darius the Great. It would have had to been who's actually, you know, why are they calling it? And then if you interpret the name Darius, they're like, well, if you interpret the name Darius for what Darius actually means, it's not actually named after one of the Dariuses. So the whole thing, just the argument is really convoluted, like a lot of apologetics. And then when you get down to the nuts, the brass tacks of it, and say, okay, well, where's the evidence? Where's the actual evidence that this is happening? Well, then it's crickets. There is no evidence. It's just a claim.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys, really quickly, I got some new people that just joined the chat. I got Richie or Stefanos and Brian. Brian, I don't think we've met. Brian, are you still here? I put you on the platform. Brian, what's up, man? I don't think we've met, but by all means, what's up? Hello? Yo, Brian? Are you there? Stefano.
So rapture. He got raptured.
You're muted, Brian. There you go.
Stefanos, what's happening? Oh, where'd Jacob go? You guys, where did Jacob go? Did he leave?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't see him.
Oh, okay. Dude, you guys, really quickly, I got Roderick Edwards. You guys know who Roderick Edwards is, right? He was a former full preterist, dude. He's authored all these books. He sent me his book. He's over here talking heck of smack on me. I'm like, dude, I brought up your name and your books, and he's saying that I was arguing like Sam Frost. Like, unbelievable, dude. Like, Roderick Edwards, if you're listening to this, man, I barely came on the scene and I landed this debate with Don. You've been in this for like 20 plus years, and here you are sending me messages. Dude, I brought up your books. I brought up your name. You know what I'm saying? That's so disrespectful. Anyways, anybody, Brian, what's up? Are you there? Stefanos, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
What's up, bro? What's happening?
Hey, dude. I think my camera is like whack, so.
Oh,
forgive me.
okay.
I
Okay, we can hear you perfectly. We hear you perfectly. What's happening?
Yeah, all good. I don't have much to comment just because I didn't see all of the debate, but yeah, I just kept and the full preterists. You know, maybe we can talk about this, but I think Don just kept making assertion that Matthew 24 verses 29 through 31 are pertaining to 70 AD, and I completely disagree with that.
Yeah.
What do they pertain to? Are you a full preterist or you're not?
No, I'm a half preterist. No, I guess you could call me partial.
Yeah.
I do believe that I do believe that Matthew 24 is divided into two.
Even though it says immediately after.
Yeah, that's a theme. That's actually a theme throughout the Gospels, especially in Mark and Matthew.
So,
What's the theme?
by the way, Richie, Stephanos was a former full preterist. He was instrumental in bringing me over to full preterism, just like Jacob. And now he's Eastern Orthodox.
This is Richie?
Yes.
Yeah, but you know his name is Stephanos, and I want to respect him. That's his name.
Yeah, but me and him had like a 2-hour-long conversation. I didn't realize that's who it was.
And I just want to say, Brian, if you're still here, I don't know if you're. I put you on the platform. You're more than welcome to talk. Brian, what's up, man?
Yeah. What's up, man? I just got my mic fixed. What's up, everybody?
Bro, what's happening?
Man. Yeah, man. I finally made it in, man. I had some technical difficulties, but I made it in. I watched the whole debate, and
okay.
it was interesting. I think it's really hard to have these kind of discussions with a lot of Christians most times, because when you're in an esoteric kind of space, can you hear me?
Yeah, but really quickly, are you Benjamin?
Yeah.
Bro, it confused me because your name was Brian. I was like, oh damn, like dude, we just spoke like not too long ago. I'm thinking, oh, you know, damn. Oh, that's up. Go ahead.
Everybody's changing damn names.
Well, my StreamYard ID has my first name, so.
Gotcha. Okay, what's up? Go ahead, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah, man. I was just going to say that in listening to the debate, it's really hard oftentimes with some Christians, because when you're in an esoteric kind of theology where it's always changing, and you're reaching back into texts like Isaiah. I mean, I think it was a good point when you held them to the fire on the Hebraic thought.
Yeah.
Because if you reach into the Hebraic thought, you're gonna have to remain consistent with that thought. You can't get to the New Testament and then try to change. Now, I understand the concept of, like when you're trying to, go from one stage of learning a language, let's say Hebrew Aramaic, changes in language or changes from, the Greek Septuagint to this, it will express, certain nuances, but it won't change the Hebraic thought. It will be the Hebraic thought expressed in whatever that particular language is. But I do think it's a slight. It'd be very difficult for some Christians to kind of how can I put it? They're always changing, like the theology, whatever they say. It's always evolving. It's changing. It never stays consistent. So one moment today to be this, tomorrow to be something different. And I think it's really hard that way if you don't, stick with what you said, the Hebraic thought. That was just my little take on it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you caught that. Daniel, Stephanos, you guys, just really quick, I just want to say this. Okay, so when I brought up 1 Thessalonians 4, the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout with the voice of the archangel. Don says that's Hebraic metaphor. I go, okay. But in his literature, he switches and says the meeting with Christ in the air, that's a Hellenized view. Apontesis is the Greek term. So I asked him, why did you switch from Hebraic metaphor to now apontesis? And so you'll notice that apontesis is not talking about, well, you can make the warranted belief that he's drawing upon Matthew 24.
I have something.
But that term apontesis, Don has used that term to describe a literal, technical, physical meeting. And every Greek scholar believes in that. Even Bart Ehrman says, yeah, they were supposed to meet him and then escort him back down to the earth. That's why I was saying, then what in the hell were they escorting then?
He didn't answer that at all.
I know he didn't. Of course he didn't.
Can I
go ahead? Go ahead.
So you're talking about the Apostle Paul, who is a Jew, a Hebrew of Hebrews, right? According to his own thing, Hebrew of Hebrews, but he's also a citizen of Rome. He's also a guy who goes by Apollos. Like he's also, so this is somebody who is while he's very Jewish, he's also living a very Greco-Roman lifestyle. This is a guy who will quote the Tanakh, and then in the same chapter quote Greek poets and philosophers that are not inspired. So I don't think it's that strange for even in the same discourse for you to see a mixing of the two cultures, because it's
but the thing is that no Greek scholar has done it. So the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout. But then the meeting with Christ is a Hellenized view.
So I have listened to, I was in the Messianic Judaic movement for a long time, and I've also listened to N.T. Wright, who's Orthodox, and they say the same stuff. Like whether you're talking about the Greek use of the term, meeting a Roman dignitary and ushering in a general, or whether you're using the Hebrew wedding where everybody goes out to meet the bride. That is an example of two different cultures having the same interpretation, but two totally different scenarios. So it's really not uncommon in a large amount of the New Testament writings, particularly the Apostle Paul, to be mixing Jewish and Roman things. So I don't know that that's a huge gotcha moment, because Paul does do that. This is the guy that can go sit down and eat with Jews, and at the same time
and that's what the futurists say. They say, look, Jesus was talking about their generation. The next verse, he's talking about them. That's
and obviously I would disagree with that. So yes,
can I make a slight comment? Can I make a slight comment? N.T. Wright is not Orthodox; he's Anglican.
Yeah. Sorry. I think it's all a cult. Whatever you assign yourself to.
Apontesis doesn't have to mean that as well.
Shots fired.
Okay, really quickly, Daniel, I know you want to say something, Brian, but really quickly, Nick, you said apontesis doesn't mean that. That's why I was quoting Don's literature.
Well, it doesn't have to. It could just mean a normal meeting too.
Okay,
it doesn't
stating that it's not just a normal meeting. He even brought up when Alexander the Great met a high priest, and when Paul met his brethren on his way to Rome. And so I go, but that was a literal technical meeting. So why are you not honoring the technical usage of that term?
How does that prove your?
Because Don has stated that you should honor the technical usage of the term. And technical means, when you look up the definition of technical, a physical, literal meeting. So I do believe, just like Bart Ehrman, that they were supposed to meet Christ and then escort him back down to the earth to dwell with him forever. And so that's why I was bringing up this photo. Then what were they escorting? His bodiless presence? And I said, you said that Christ's body was burnt up. And then he had to state, well, now I changed my mind. And the reason why he changed his mind is because the full preterist saw the errors in that.
Does that make you respect him as a man and as a minister to publicly say, you know what? I was wrong. I changed my mind.
And I hope that he would change his mind about dancing in the freaking streets when his relatives, and like I said, I quoted from the Facebook. I mean, he tried to say that I said something. And I said, where's your evidence? He goes, I don't have it. And I said, okay, so you're not prepared for this debate.
That's
so
what
like I said, I got the evidence where he states it.
Did you guys agree? not to bring that up in the debate.
Yeah,
He like said,
okay, now listen, before the debate, he was telling Derek, I don't want the dancing in the streets brought up. Why don't you? That's the reason why I'm here on this debate. So I said, okay, Don, blah, 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 blah.
oh, what happened to Richie?
Guys, listen, I got it tatted literally right here on my leg. Dancing in the streets in 70 AD.
Oh my God, you got it.
I got it.
Last time I talked to you, you said you're
man,
going to do
dude,
it.
I'm telling you, that was such a historical moment for me because
You should have showed Don.
I did. I posted in Predator's Perspectives.
Oh, okay.
No commentator, no theologian, no scholar, no preacher has ever stated this in human history. He made that up. Oh my goodness. I got Derek coming on. I got to let him on, you guys. Derek, what's up, man?
Dude, what up?
But
Dude,
people
what a
are
moderator.
capable of thinking.
Thank you.
The best moderator in the game. What can I say?
Dude, Tristan. It's like two bros fighting, right? And like all night they're fighting at the bar. And like I'm trying my best to be the middle friend. And it was very difficult, bro. I'm not gonna lie. Like this was like because I'm like
sorry.
Don's an elder. I respect Don. I love the guy. I think he's an absolute awesome person.
Same.
You're my friend. And I'm thinking to myself, quit being little shits and just, like.
Sorry, man. Look, at the end of the day, I had to be me, and so I hope that I brought about an entertaining debate, something that was worth watching, a second, third, or fourth time, whatever.
Of course.
And dude, you're a great moderator. You were more than fair. What can I say, dude? It's an opportunity of a lifetime. I did my best. What can I say, you guys? I did my best. I try to bring up some visuals. I try to bring up some arguments. I try to hold on to the fire of his own statements. And what can I say, you guys? I did my best.
I can't stay long, Tristan. I jumped out of my sitting in the bathtub to come on here and say it.
I get it.
I did. I just jumped out of the bath. I had to soak for a second. I'll make my few comments here, and this is in favor of your position. I think that there were a few gotcha moments where you really caught his attention. There were some things that, when you're in the debate, I imagine you don't think about them till later. One of the things that's really dawned on me for a long time now, to full preterists, to get them to think for a moment, not to like, haha. I mean, when you're belief doesn't come and go, just it's a process as you learn, right? And to me, it's like all of them point to a soon, near future. Give me the it has happened. Here is the thing. What I'm saying is all of them are like, it's about to. It's we who are alive and remain, it's about to. So it's easy when you already accept the literature and believe it to just go, well, if they said it's about to, it did. Well, when you start asking critical questions, if I did this with the Quran, by the way, the Quran is apocalyptic as well, and it has near soon eschatological expectations. If I said that Muhammad said near soon, and then there were a full preterist group of Muslims, a full preterist Christian would combat him and go, where did it happen? When did it happen? And prove it happened. So
I wish I would have used that.
The same epistemological argument, right, would be used for both. And it'd be easy to go, Muhammad was not the final prophet. It did not happen. We get to Christianity, different story. There's a lot of prior knowledge that builds into why we draw our conclusions. But I guess what I'm getting at is if you can get them to kind of think like, notice every time from the text, they're talking about something that is supposed to about to happen. Right. It's supposed to about to happen. Paul, his letters seem like we who are alive and remain, like there's this hope. It's about to take place.
Yeah, they all died.
Yeah.
They can't help it.
Well, yeah. But I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is like, when did it happen?
I don't know, but the fact that we're still freaking talking about it thousands of years later proves that this must have been valid.
Well, we're talking about Islam, and it's got almost they're going to pass Christianity soon. So, like in terms of numbers, they're populating way quicker than Christians. And I guess what I'm getting at is like majority, the amount of time we talk about something has no validity on the truthness of any of it. And I guess I would just say to Don, for example, it sounds to me when you're arguing metaphor this, metaphor that, because you can find tons of examples of metaphor death, Hosea, Israel as a national identity. There's national corporate idea of death and all that. tons of stuff in the Old Testament. I like to anchor it to contemporary works of the New Testament. One of the things that Don said, though, was like, well, Jesus doesn't agree with Jewish ideas of this. I love when he does this, right? Because it's such an interesting thing to go, hold on. It is true. Why is he not a militant Messiah? Like all the expectation, a son of David. David was militant. Why wasn't he like that? And the list goes on. And you have Bart Ehrman's, right? They have like a post hoc explanation where they say like, well, the disciples were looking for a real militant one, like the real historical people who followed Jesus, because he doesn't accept the Gospels as saying exactly what actually happened. In reaction to his death, they had to then puzzle piece in Pesher form some way to make sense of why this dude didn't turn out to be the sword-wielding Messiah. And so, like, oh, no, he was supposed to die and all of that. Look, I get that's a possibility. I'm not persuaded of his position here. I think it's intentional. I think it's literary, though. So, like, it depends on how you approach this. And I had a buddy of mine. I don't do debates, guys, but I might at some point do them just because I'm like, to stay relevant, to pop, to
well,
like.
Let me be the first, because dang it, my wife went from a Seventh-day Adventist to a non-denominational Christian to a full preterist in about a 6-month time period. And the second she stumbled upon your little number one video, she, I think it's called the Jesus Trip. After about 24 hours of like digesting that, she's now an atheist. So thank you very much. Called? Did you put a video about, it's called Preterism, the Jesus Trip?
I don't think I did one named that.
Whatever it is, there's a video that you do where you're about 60 seconds in and you go, and that's why I'm no longer a believer. And she was like, what? It's like when you search like preterism, you're like the first 3 videos that come up.
Oh, wow.
She became, of course, I already had years of literature. Finally, we had the conversation. I showed her the time statements. She was like, oh, wow, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. I showed her the interpretation. I had all the works of Josephus in the books. She was like, okay, well, this makes sense. And then she watched your videos and she was like, oh, it's nonsense. So I've been dealing with that for years. Thanks a lot.
Okay, well, I don't want to, I guess it depends on how you want to, what you mean by nonsense. Like if nonsense means, I don't think this happened.
Myth.
Then,
yeah.
Myth. But because dude, I love fiction. Okay. And I think fiction is powerful. This is the point. I think we approach the material a little different. Oftentimes Christians are trying to make a historically valid argument. And I think they're missing the ultimate point of a lot of this literature. And that is it's telling you truth in myth. It's telling you truth in narrative and not in literal historical bona fide facts. And what I mean by truth is not testable, discernible, scientific. That's a different category of truth. I'm talking in more of an esoteric, more of like a old man tells a wise tale to a kid. The kid learns a lesson and grows up and his life's transformed. More in literary, social type truth that can help change and transforms one's life philosophically. And I think Christianity is rooted in Platonic philosophy and myth. And when I say myth, I'm working on a script right now, Jacob. Dude, I am almost like, I think this might even, I don't even know what your position is. I think it'll persuade you. The evidence is so solid in the book of Acts that the Apostle Paul, who was called Saul, is based off a Greek myth, Orestes and Iphigenia. And the ancient Iphigenia myth is that Agamemnon, the king of Troy, right, goes to try and I think it's Troy, or he's heading towards Troy. It's in the War of Troy. He can't leave the bay. There's no wind. So he has this bright idea. I'll sacrifice, because I think one of the gods mentioned if you sacrifice, but he goes to sacrifice his daughter Iphigenia. He tricks her to come. He sacrifices her. And in most myths, she's rescued at the last second. Sound familiar? Yeah, Abraham and Isaac. But the point is, rescues her, right? And they go and they fight the battle and they're able to win. But because he sacrificed his daughter, which was like total taboo and absolutely forbidden, in the myth, it's also trying to say hey, humans are really sacrificing humans. We need to cut this crap out. Like there is an underlying sociological reason the myth exists, and it's oftentimes to condemn the action, the real action of humans sacrificing humans, which we see Phoenicians did. Ancient Israelites seem to have done. We have little fossils in the Hebrew Bible that imply, hey, I asked you for your firstborn son, but give me this instead now. And there's law codes.
Shit. I watch a lot of your content, and I compare it to Frank Turek, and a lot of times I like your answers better. I am so convinced, just based off of the benefit in my personal life, that the myth thing could end up being verified for me, and it wouldn't change when we're talking about the definition of truth. We're talking about benefit for humanity.
Right. Right.
I don't think truth necessarily, like when we're talking about the philosophical, immaterial version of truth, not like well, it actually historically happened, but like, well, it's true in the sense of it's good and it's fruitful. I don't think any amount of and maybe this is cognitive dissonance, but I'm being vulnerable. Jordan Peterson talks about this. Like, Jesus doesn't need to be real for him to be real, if that makes sense.
I get it.
So, if you ever would want to, I would love to. I'm very familiar with this stuff. I'd love to come on your show. You can play up the MMA stuff and use all that to promote it if you wanted to. But I think you're a really smart guy. Have a lot of interesting stuff. A lot of historical comparisons to other stories, and you're a gentleman. But I don't know that any of it would ever. I'm so like locked in that it's like, God. So I would be very curious to hear. I don't know that it's on record anywhere. What is your deconversion story? Where did you? I know you said you can't stay long, but like, did you go through some sort of a personal turmoil, depression, identity crisis when you realized, at least for where you're at, like, oh, this isn't historically true? Like, what was your? Did you struggle with that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, in a way, but it was slow. So I was able to land the airplane rather than crash and burn.
Because Tristan seems to be freed from like have this joy and peace and excitement about it all.
Yeah.
But for me, when I contemplate that reality, I'm like, well, dude, let me just step in traffic. So what was your experience?
Yeah, if you are feeling that way, as a skeptical guy, I encourage you find a philosophy that gives you the glass half full, that makes you find meaning and purpose and helps you, even if you got to tell yourself the noble lie. The noble lie can still be noble if in the end it actually achieves a better outcome. And to me, for me, I prefer to encourage people to find what gives them hope, what helps them, what gives them happiness. Because if I was living in people might go, well, what is the purpose? What is there? If there is no God, then what? All of these questions. I can put myself down really quick and think, okay, we evolved here, survival of the fittest, start talking about some dark things about how life has had to eat itself in order to survive on this planet in various forms. But I don't live my life like a robot, a scientific, rational machine. But back to your point about what I went through, I'd have to say what I started off as fundamentalist Christian, evangelical, speaking in tongues, gifts of the Holy Ghost, the whole nine.
Wow.
Non-denominational. I moved from that to like a Calvary Chapel type. I moved from that to a Baptisty Calvinist type. Then I became a Reformed Presbyterian in the PCA.
Well, you were the shifted by every sea of doctrine type guy.
I was the winds, the to and fro with the winds guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I got mocked by Christians about always changing my theology. And I was always like, how can they be so certain their theology is right?
I understand.
Yeah. So then I moved from Calvinism, went to college. I was going to be a minister or something. I was planning on being a pastor. And I relapsed. So I struggled with drug addiction, and I ended up in a existential situation where I was going to die from addiction after many years of on and off opiates, and then it became heroin. I was injecting heroin. I was dying, and I didn't understand how I really believed I had the Holy Spirit, and truly believe that Holy Spirit should empower me. If a son asks for bread, does he give him a stone? I'm simply asking for the power and the capability to permanently cure this disease that constantly eats at me that I don't know how to stop. And that's escaping reality and trying to find peace. And that was through the drugs. And I guess during a withdrawal, at some point during my constant attempts to try and get clean once and for all, I was watching videos where they did mythic parallels. It was Zeitgeist. And in this video on Zeitgeist, which does over exaggerate parallels, mythic parallels between Horus and several other deities to Jesus, I had never even heard this, though. I mean, I heard it in passing from Ravi Zacharias. He had a book called like Jesus Among Other Gods and things like that.
Well, he turned out to be a great guy.
Huh?
Yeah, he had wild claims against him.
He turned out to be a real swell guy.
Dude, he was one of my favorite apologists. And
yeah, that broke my heart when I found out.
Broke mine, too. I loved him even after I deconverted. Like, I was like, this guy was really just such a heart grabber and a mind. He knew how to connect mind and heart. And that was part of his ministry, was the RZIM was like, let's connect the mind and heart. And he did it in a way that made me feel what I thought. And I loved that. And then William Lane Craig was another big guy who really made me think, oh, this is intellectual and I can really combat ideas with this guy. So the journey took me to questioning, going, is there anything to this? What these people are saying? If Jesus is like these others, then what? And I started to evaluate, if you will, comparative mythology. And usually Jesus was taboo. It was okay to compare Buddha and Muhammad. It was okay if it wasn't my guy. But once I was willing to go down that path and found people who didn't have like a theological axe to grind already that said, hey, we cannot and we should not put Jesus in a similar category to other deities or to other demigod heroes, you know, guys who are born half mortal, half divine. They have fathers that are gods, mothers that are mortals. They lived and then they have like a suffering stage, like the 12 labors of Hercules. They die and have an apotheosis. They literally ascend to heaven. There's a myth that says that Hercules was literally seen floating up in the clouds to Mount Olympus. You have this with Romulus as well. He was seen in the clouds, literally in a thunderclap. And the Senate was like, where did he, the people were like, the Senate must have killed him. But the Senate literally was saying, no, we don't know where he went. His body disappeared like Jesus disappears from the tomb. And like, so I found these things that aren't zeitgeist, but they're bona fide, legit ancient sources that walk and talk and sound eerily similar, never identical. And here's the funny thing is, when you look at the Gospels, none of the Gospels are identical. So you're not even going to get the same story within the same thing to be identical. So the argument I've heard of people going, it's not identical, therefore you can't make the argument. I've heard apologists do. I'm like, dude, your own Gospels aren't identical. Let's not do that, because based on that, we can pull out the threads and I could show you why is Jesus in the Gospel of John being killed. The whole reason he's crucified in John's gospel is because he cleanses the temple. But in the other gospels, he cleanses the temple early on, and vice versa. The synoptics have him being killed for cleansing the temple and being in Jerusalem. But in the Gospel of John, it's at the beginning of the ministry. So apologists will go, he did it twice to make it reconcile. And I'm like, okay, so now we're getting into contradictions. So, but that was not what led me down this path. It was literally finding out that much of the narratives in the Gospels not only share a common mythic element and overwhelming parallels, it was that many of these myths do predate and are very likely templates from which inspired the gospel narratives about our Christ. And when I found that out, I was like, makes sense, because Hercules was like the dude for centuries in the Greco-Roman world. If you wanted to model yourself, the Stoics literally saw themselves as walking in the footsteps of Heracles. He was called Hercules in Rome. He was the chief model on how to live a life. He wore only the animal skin and his club. He was homeless, and he went around and did these suffering labors, 12 of them. Well, I know another guy who had no home to lay his head under, and also suffered in his life, similar to these philosopher type people. And so, like, they also die. They're taken and becoming gods in heaven. Jesus ascends to heaven. Heracles ascends to Mount Olympus. And I found all this stuff, man. And I'll just say, I took it seriously, and I said, well, why did this one happen, but none of the others didn't? Because
I get that.
All those myths.
So, like, as of today, you don't like subscribe to any sort of a god by name, or if I don't know if you have time, but I have a friend who was a really strong believer, and he was a beast when it came to the presuppositional apologetics.
Yeah.
But it was because of that he was just convinced of like a general creator, and he's a big NASA nut, whatever. He started watching the Ancient Aliens show. Somehow he ended up studying the Sumerian documents, and now he says prayers and chants and stuff to the sun and moon gods of Sumer.
Right.
But he was raised as a Christian, and he was a pretty decent apologist, when it came to just, so what do you do with that information with a guy who he's really smart, he makes a lot of money, he like Tristan, he's really calculated with stock investments, he's got a really strong family, just really one of the most brilliant people I know, and he went from being a beast at apologetics to now he worships the sun and the moon of another culture because of Gilgamesh and a bunch of different stuff. What do you what's your opinion of somebody like that, who is an intelligent person, loves his family, but is a very strong advocate of a religion that's not popular at all, and it's much more ancient and quite frankly dead? Is he crazy? What do you?
I mean, technically, you could say all of us are crazy and delusional in some way. I mean, we've learned to survive, not because we learned what actually is the case. A lot of times our survival might be based off something that's erroneous, but we've lived with it for so long and evolved this way. But as far as that concerned, you made me think of this stand-up comedian. I always laugh. He's like a skeptic. He's no longer around, but he always used to say, I worship the sun. I see it. I feel it. It's real. Like it's, and he says he worships the sun. Now he's joking. He doesn't actually believe in the sun, but he's like, he's making a joke while saying, I feel it, I see it and such. And then
Carl
gods that you can't, you know what I mean? Carl something, I think his name is.
George Carl.
Yeah.
The big electron. Yeah.
Yeah. He's funny. He's making a joke, but look, I always said this too. Like, we can verify. We have original tablets, like the actual clay tablets that go back of Gilgamesh. And we're talking 4,500-year-old tablets. The oldest of any data, empirical data, like hard evidence of the Bible written down.
Sure.
You're talking 2,200 to 2,300 years old.
Yeah, it's old.
You're talking 2,000 plus years before that. This amount, almost the amount of distance from us to the Dead Sea Scrolls is from the Dead Sea Scrolls to Gilgamesh. And I hear Christians all the time, clearly not studied on history and like making solid arguments on this, because it's like, they'll go, nope, Genesis is older than Gilgamesh. And I'm like, thousands of years. The Hebrew language wasn't even invented. It came out of Phoenician dialect. Like, Phoenicians had the alphabet before the Hebrew.
What do you do with
language.
the idea of Genesis isn't a literal 6 days, so whatever Moses wrote down could have been in theory millions of years old of a story,
Yeah.
or it's all covenantal, metaphorical. None of it's to be like it doesn't matter when it was written down. Something could happen.
You can tell yourself whatever you need to, but where's the evidence?
Yeah, I mean, I had a bunch of I had a bunch of terrible stuff happen to me between the years of 8 and 10. I didn't actually talk about them until last year, and even my own family was like, "Hey," they my parents didn't believe me because it took me 20 years to talk about it, and I was like, "Well, I didn't think you would believe me, and I didn't want to ruin your holidays and your family dinners and tell you about what happened with Uncle so and so I didn't talk about it, but so I think I don't know, just personal experience tells me um, an amount of time allotted before information's written down or exposed is irrelevant to the truth. That's just a personal. Yeah, I know that's one of those. The
Hey, really quickly, you guys, I just want to say, I know there's a few others in the chat that would
yeah,
like to speak on this. And I want to say, Derek and Jacob, I'm so glad that you guys are finally talking. I think, Derek, I've talked to you about Jacob before,
Yeah.
former UFC fighter. This guy's a freaking beast. He's an MMA instructor, so schooled in the scripture. He was very instrumental in bringing me over to full preterism. But I got Mike Karras here. And Mike Karras, we all know who he is if you've been in the preterist community. I actually had a hot seat debate with Mike Karras. Daniel, Nick, Brian, I think Richie stepped out. You guys are more than welcome to stay on. I know there's a lot of people that are talking, but if you guys need to check out, by all means, you don't need to stay. But I just want to acknowledge Mike Karras and the rest of you guys who've been, listening. Mike Karras, dude, you're a good man. Dude, I did bring you up in the debate. I didn't want to. But when you're in the tassel, I had to bring it up because you did make some statements in Brian Simmons' podcast. But at the end of the day, Mike, I just want to take my hat off to you. You are a good man.
Oh, I didn't hear it.
Oh, okay. Yes. I wasn't like, it
He
wasn't
did.
like
I'll delete it
disparaging
before he
statements.
sees it. No.
Yeah, it wasn't disparaging statements. I just brought up something about the sin issue and how you had stated that they had asked you on Brian Simmons' podcast, do you still sin? And you had said no. Like, I know you said you sin in your biology and your psychology, but you don't sin in the spirit. And that's when I brought you up. But I by no means meant to be degrading or disparaging by any
I would
means. When
agree
you're
with
in the
that.
fight, when
No,
you're in the fight with Don Preston, who's been
misrepresented me.
debating since freaking he's been debating since 1983, before I was even freaking born, before many of us were even born. You have to understand that you got to go ahead. You got to pull some weapons out, and it just so happens that you came to mind. And so you're just kind of going with the flow of nature. But anyways, you guys, I'm sorry. I'm listening. I'm a fan.
I will back Mike with. I was raised with that like fundamental the sinless perfection is what they would call it, but I came to know it as my experience of all the things that I hated about myself that were destroying my relationship, that were holding me back in life. Once I submitted and gave all that up, literally like a supernatural, like chemotherapy taking away cancer, all the things I struggle with, lust, overindulgence of whatever, anger, you name it, like all that stuff, night and day gone. So I'm the guy that's going, hey, the good news of the gospel is that all the stuff that made you a scumbag can be actually taken away. That's why it's good news. It's not good news that one day, 80 years from now, when you die, you're going to go to heaven. The good news is that all the stuff that you hate about yourself can be gone overnight if you'll just let Jesus take care of it. I can honestly say here, August 10th, still in my time, 2025, I don't wrestle with sin. As far as I know there's many different definitions of, all unrighteousness is sin, whatever's not of faith is of sin, that to know good and not do it is sin, transgression of law is sin. But in the sense of like anything that not from faith is sin, I don't wrestle with that. All that's gone. So whatever the experiential factor you talked about in the AD 70 with the perfected saints, that is my day-to-day experience. I don't
Yeah, I
wrestle.
wasn't even.
I don't wrestle with that.
That wasn't my position. My position is that in Christ I'm perfect. Through one sacrifice, I've been perfected forever. But I see a dichotomy or even trichotomy, body, soul, and spirit. So from a spiritual ontological sense, my righteousness doesn't come through my biology. It comes through my union with Christ. So it's through Christ that's made propitiation for my sins.
Sure.
So there's a scripture that says, "Blessed are those who God doesn't impute sin anymore." So there has to be an ontological reality post 70 AD. If you're not in Adam and you're not in Moses, and you're in Christ, and there's no tree of the knowledge of good and evil, there has to be an ontological grounding for this idea that within the sacred space between you and God, there's got to be some sense that you're ontologically without sin. Otherwise, God can't.
Yeah, really quickly, Michael. That's what I was saying. Go ahead, Derek.
Tristan, if I can put your words of what I felt you were saying in the debate, correct me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I didn't finish. But go ahead, guys. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I want to hear you finish.
You guys are excited, I know.
Well,
No,
it's just, this is such an important point.
It's an important point. Right. No, and I think that, again, to be consistent as a full preterist, you do have to consider sort of exploring where I'm going with this, right? If you're transitioning out of an age that brought sin and death. So in Christ brings life. But again, it's like Revelation 21 to me is just theology. It's imagery portraying theology. And the theology is that you're united with God because of Christ. But that doesn't mean we're lawless. So there is a law of Christ, or a law of love, bearing the burdens of others, the law of faith. I actually think you can violate the law of Christ, but there's no condemnation. So in other words, I would see that I'm a child of God. And what that means, the son of God, I'm not under condemnation if I sin according to in my flesh or my biology, because I don't believe I can sin in my spirit that's been united with God. Because how can God dwell in some sense, there's got to be some sense where God can dwell, where it's not like a swivel chair. If I say I sin in my biology, God shifts and he's not with me anymore. And then if I do the right thing, he's with me. That's the way it was under the old covenant. So there has to be a spiritual, covenantal sense in which there's an aspect of me. Even Paul, he has an idea of your biology can be grounded in Thessalonica, but your spirit is united with Christ in the heavenly realm. In other words, so that's where I see it. So, but the difference now, if I do sin, in my experience as a son of God, because that's my identity, the Spirit will realign me under my identity in love and in teaching, in discipline, not as, okay, you're going under condemnation, or I'm going to judge you with eternal fire, or I'm going to disown you. So I do think there has to be a difference between the old covenant and the new, being united in Adam and Moses and united in Christ. So I'm exploring that with what I'm trying to discuss.
I will go on record, and you can clip it and title it, get your headlines, get your clicks. God's the God that I believe in, Jesus Christ, Yahweh, strike me dead if I'm lying. I don't struggle with sin. The quote unquote lust of the flesh, not an issue with me at all. I'm a positive influence in the community because of my faith in Christ. Nothing that consumes my energy, any of my calorie burning, any of my thoughts, even my dreams would be considered anything that's unrighteous. So I don't, even in my biology, I don't struggle with sin, and I preach to others.
But your sinless state from a covenantal point of view can't be your biology or your own righteousness. So that's where you have to.
Yeah, I'm not concerned with the salvation of my biology, but I preach that the good news of the gospel is that Jesus provided a better way that isn't Torah observance, it's Torah insertion, it's Torah downloading. So it's it's a wonderful thing to submit completely. I'm sure some of you guys are looking, going, "This is crazy," but like, this is when I'm talking to young.
If you walk in the Spirit, you're not going to fulfill the lust of the flesh.
100%. I deal with guys all the time.
I understand where you're going. Yeah,
like
you're
trouble.
matured, but you've been matured into that state. Like
potentially, yeah. I deal with troubled young men that are in the army and all that stuff. They come into the fight gym, and they just, man, they're just, they're drunks. They're full of lust. They're sleeping with every girl they can. They're doing, and I am able to expose them to a transformative power. We're talking overnight change, not some grow into it sanctified, but I'm talking overnight change of, because Jesus accomplished all of this, everything that you're struggling with that you know better than, I can change it right now if you'll just say yes.
Right. So you're talking about
Wait,
saying.
hold on, gentlemen. I'm sorry. I just got to get in here. I, as an agnostic and a skeptic, and I know you guys are all believers, or not all of you, but I just got to say, I was very similar to Derek. I mean, I had to struggle with drugs, alcohol, the whole thing, and overcome all that. But the difference is I was never a believer. I've always been an agnostic my whole life. Now, you see my picture here. I'm riding this innovative kayak you've probably never seen before. I've got 2 patents to my name. I'm licensed to build boats with the U.S. Coast Guard. I completely turned my life around. And I don't have to give any credit to any gods or any deities or anybody else except for the friends and family who supported me, and to my own strength. And that is such an empowering feeling. And I'm not trying to say, if you guys need a God to get you through the day or through the hard times, more power to you. I'm definitely not trying to deconvert anybody. But for anybody who might watch this video, I just want you to know that there's a real power into pulling up your own bootstraps. You know what I mean? Getting up every day and doing it because you know it's the right thing to do. That's just my 2 cents. I didn't mean to be rude and interrupt. And like I said, I'm not trying to talk anybody out of being religious. I see that
I love that.
These religions cause a lot of harm at the end of the day. Not the religious individual, not the individuals. I'm sure you guys are all solid dudes. But as a whole, these religions cause a lot of harm. So I'm all about harm reduction. As an agnostic, I'm a bit of a humanist, I guess they call it. I don't really like all these titles, but it is what it is. But harm reduction is what I'm all about. So if you want to be religious, look into Buddhism or something like that. I mean, Derek knows, he does this stuff all the time. He can tell you that the Buddhist community is the most peaceful community. Whatever you guys got to do. But I mean,
are you
the whole is cause the harm? If the whole, in other words, most Muslims are not violent, although some of the texts.
I have no doubt. But look at throughout history. Look at history. That's we all know history.
You're saying you're overgeneralizing to say that religion itself, if religion itself was that bad, most people are religious. Therefore, the world would be a much worse place. I would think. If there's no if there's no Christian ethics, for me, I know it's helped to guide me in making better decisions. So Christian ethics,
they're not Christian ethics. That's the whole thing about it. This religion has evolved.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where the ethics come from. If most people are Christian, then what I'm saying is, if it was inherently bad, 2.5 billion Christians, the world would be
60 seconds.
90% of the people in prisons, 90% of the people who are incarcerated are Christians in America.
I mean, listen, the Christian ethic is terrible, in my opinion. The Christian ethic is terrible.
Christians in the world, and it's inherently evil, then the world would literally be on fire right now.
Yeah, I get it, but I want to address this guy's question. By the way, I believe the Christian ethic is terrible. Turn your cheek and forgive the one who raped your wife and murdered your children. That's terrible. Christopher Hitchens brought this up many times, and I side with that. Bertrand Russell as well. But look, seeing how the evidence is against full preterism, what would you say is the primary motivation behind the thesis? I just want to honor this guy's question. Derek, really quickly, he did a ChatGPT on who won the debate, said I won. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see. We'll find out.
I did a poll, but it was based on the viewers that were watching currently. So it could be easily skewed by my skeptic audience. It could easily, I'm
gonna pull the transcript and put it in the ChatGPT and ask.
ChatGPT, yeah. Run that. I'd be curious to see what like AI, if it can handle.
Don spanked him like a little boy.
Both sides are going to be like, nah.
Whatever. It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, guys, it's almost 1 on the East Coast here. I'm about to hit the sack. We just got a new house. I'm so tired. I got to go to Universal Studios all day tomorrow, so I'm going to be burnt.
Holy cow. Damn. Okay, nice. Derek, bro. Thank you so much, man, for allowing me on your podcast, Derek. You're absolute legend.
Appreciate you,
in
Derek.
Humanity. At the end of the day, bro, full preterism would never even come on this platform if it wasn't for you on this level. Richard Carrier, And at the end of the day, bro, thank you so very much, bro. You're a brother. And like I said it before, I don't know if you guys know this, but I have MythVision tatted right here on my chest. You guys, I got full preterism. I got IO. I got MV, because that's my life story. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, you guys, I'm just trying to pursue truth. And Derek, thank you so very much.
Well, thank
Derek,
you
good for you for sticking with Bob Price, bro. I have mad respect on you. Big ups for that.
Man,
Hey.
that's a whole.
I didn't want to bring that up. I didn't want to bring that up in the middle of all this, but I'm not going to probably get a chance to talk to you again in my life. So I just wanted to say, hey, I'm giving you flowers for that. You got to stick by your friends. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but
Yeah,
you can always email. You can always add me on Facebook. And I love that guy. I got pressured by some bullshit, and there was.
I saw that video you put out. I was like one of the first 200 people that watched that.
Yeah, man.
Wow.
Yeah, but I'm thankful. Like, talk about unburdening oneself. I didn't want to even bring anything up, and then when I did an interview. I was like, screw it, I'm just bringing them back. And then when they all wanted to stir the hornet's nest, and they were like, and then they did this stream, and they were shit talking me.
Oh, it was a shit show, bro.
Oh, my wife went, it's time. Put the gloves on. You need to tell them your truth. And that's when I was like, all right, my name's Derek Lambert. I kept it real and just went straight into it. And bro, I mean, I didn't know that all was written since like 4 that morning. And then I just read it, and then I made the video and then launched it. And I just laying out the facts of what really took place and how it all went down. And at the end of the day, Bob forgave me. What made me hesitant was, would he, right? Like, would he be able to look past what happened and understand? Because I don't think you can fully, without understanding like what I had going on in my head and how, you can't really get it. And we talked a lot off record before all this happened for him to understand it. And I understood. I had to realize that, like, would you really honestly want to apologize to people who just hawked loogies in your face and called you every name under the sun? No. So I wasn't thinking, would I do that? Hell no, I wouldn't apologize to these people. They're being absolute douchebags. And so all this should have never happened, but we are in the kingdom, not on the outside of the gates now. You know what I'm saying?
Before you go, Derek, I just want to say, Brian, Benjamin, Nick, Daniel, I just want to say this, dude. Derek is so reachable, man. I invited you guys on the Preterist Perspectives. Brian, he used to be a former Hebrew Israelite, as a matter of fact. He saw my appearance with Captain Taz, is his name. Brian, Benjamin, if you're still here, bro, I invited you in the Preterist Perspectives. Dude, one thing about Derek is that he's so reachable, man. It's so cool. He's extremely busy. I'm always reluctant to even shoot him a text or call him, because I know he's a family man. He's super busy, changing the world. But please, by all means, you guys, dude, Derek is the real deal. And if you guys haven't talked to him, Daniel just said you may never talk to him again. Dude, you will talk to him again, dude. Derek is that guy.
Well, yeah, just message me.
Yeah,
I mean, dude, I might be a god, but come on.
Yeah, dude, come in the freaking Facebook group, you guys. Preterist Perspectives, Discussions, and Debate, dude. That's where it's at, you guys. You're going to see everybody who's a voice in the Preterist community. Don is there, freaking Sam Frost, everybody, Roderick Edwards, all that. And by the way, Derek, Roderick Edwards just hit me up, just talking heck a mess, bro. Saying that, like, just talking heck a mess.
That guy's got
book.
some
I
good
brought up
books.
your name. Why are you being disrespectful? I'm not even going to read the rest of his messages. I'm ghosting
He's
him.
pissed.
Yeah, he's like, well, that's disappointing. You're arguing like Sam Frost. I go, dude, you're hella disrespectful, bro. Don't even hit me up no more. I'm not even going to open up his message. I brought up your books. I brought up your name on MythVision podcast. You've been in this game for decades, and you still haven't landed the debate with Don. So, dude, get out of here, bro.
Hey, I got a quick question for you, Derek.
Yeah.
The guy that you brought on, whose theory that basically the Bible was just like a scribal community get together that was written at Alexandria, how was that received? Like, do his peers like think that's like a wild theory, or like in your comment sections? I thought it was pretty interesting.
The Hebrew Bible, right? The Old Testament.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a minority position. Most of the scholars, even the critical, like very critical ones, typically land in the Persian period. And they don't usually go all the way into the Hellenistic for like the totality of the Bible. Most of them think it happened, well, the critical ones, post-exile, that it was written. But there seems to be a growing trend of what they call minimalist, where really minimalism, there's a lot of, it's like dirty words, right? You can call, oh, you're a full preterist. That could be a cuss word, or that could be like, hey, no, that means he believes Jesus returned in 70 AD, whatever that return means. And so minimalism amongst some is a curse word in the field, but to others, it's just helping you categorize and understand that they ultimately start with what we have absolute evidence of. Everything else becomes conjecture and oftentimes circular reasoning. So let me give you an example. How old is the book of Ezekiel or Hosea? Hosea supposedly was written in the 8th century BCE when the prophet Hosea lived. And these writings supposedly by Hosea were penned in the 8th century. Many scholars think actually, these weren't written down till a century later, or the text we have been tampered with by the Persian period. Then there are some scholars who say, no, Hosea is a fictive prophet. If there was one, there might be some fossils in the book of Hosea that go back, but the text ultimately we have was written in, Persia, Hellenistic period. What I'm getting at is what do we have? Well, we have the Dead Sea Scrolls. We have some exterior or external sources that might mention a king or a particular figure in the Bible at some point, but we don't have text. Those Bible, we don't have kings. We don't have, Jeremiah. We don't have these prophets, these texts that we see, the Torah, none of that in physical, actual evidence before the Dead Sea Scrolls. So then you have to go, I have hard evidence of when we know this stuff shows up. Minimalists work backwards from what we know. Maximalists usually go, well, the text says in the year of King Nebuchadnezzar II, therefore it was written in the king of Nebuchadnezzar. They just accept at face value what the text says.
Right.
Usually they accept that. So Moses is, sometime in the Bronze Age, right? Some argue for the 15th century. Some argue for the 12th, 13th century BCE. There's different schools of thought. But most scholars that are critical don't take the maximalist view that Moses wrote this stuff back here. They tend to go, well, we say 7th, 8th century BCE. More critical go, no, post-exile, after the 6th century into the 5th and 4th century. Okay, so you get this like gradient scale. Well, there's people who try to go, well, I'm in the middle. I'm neither maximalist nor minimalist, but they're sympathetic to the maximalist view in a way. And you can hear Niels Peter Lemke gets into this in his book, his recent book. So let me spare you a lot more detail here just to end on this. What the minimalists do is they go, we know the Dead Sea Scrolls is the oldest empirical data of these texts we have. Is there any evidence in these texts that we might have reason to think that these were written actually within a few decades or maybe within a century of the Dead Sea Scroll text we have, rather than all the way back there? There's so many anachronisms. It was commonplace to fabricate data, and we're not just talking about for the Bible, okay? We're talking all across the board. So we like to treat the Bible like we do every other piece of literature, and we go, okay, were they crafting fictive kings, fictive lawgivers, fictive philosophers? They did this on a regular in every culture that was literary. And the Bible is no different. And so scholars point out this guy acts, behaves, looks very much like the fictive king over here. And they'll find material that helps them go, well, there's no reason to say that that guy existed that actually wrote this stuff way back here. He might actually be invented in a later period. All that to say, dude, it's a huge debate. I mean, it's never, I don't think it's ever going to be resolved, honestly. It's always going to be a fun, interesting, mental masturbating exercise, to be honest.
I thought it was super interesting. And he was like pointing out how there's no evidence out externally that brings this up like before the 4th century. And so that's why he's like arguing.
So when you ask, you're probably talking about Gad Barnea, it might be Niels Peter Lemke, but when you ask the guy, when do you then think? And when they answer you, I'm not sure. I tend to think Alexandria, because, bro, they took everything. Alexander the Great, and under him, they went everywhere. They didn't go to destroy. They weren't like the Assyrians who conquered and then dispersed people, and they were like kind of a little ruthless in the way that they behaved with their gods and others. The Greeks assimilated the material, not just trying to make everyone Hellenized. They actually incorporated the knowledge of the world. They said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take this Phoenician concept, and then I'm going to philosophize from this Eastern Persian stuff, and then I'm going to take Egyptian mythology, and I'm going to incorporate all of it, and we're going to synthesize it into one massive knowledge base for all of us to learn from. And that's what Alexandria became. The Library of Alexandria was the most impeccable library in history ever in the world. And the fact that they had a Jewish quarter about 50, I can't remember, it was like 50 meters away or 500 meters away. There was a Jewish quarter right there next to the library. They were scholastic thinkers who studied the materials, learned the languages. So the idea that Jews who were not learning this material were not also emulating the well-known deep thought of the ancient world and all the cultures, I think is a very naive position to hold. And I think that when someone like me comes along and an atheist, which, you know, I'm friends with everybody, agnostics, atheists, and everybody, but oftentimes we have this kind of axe to grind. I hate it, stupid, it's dumb. I see the sophistication. I see the creative genius in narrative and how they did this. Now, don't get me wrong. I can point out some flaws, but I'm very into how brilliant that narrative was and how subtle so many myth themes that I see, tropes and elements from different cultures being synthesized into the Bible. I'm impressed by it. And so maybe Christians like to hear me say that because I think it's genius. I think there's some really smart, creative moves. I just don't think we're dealing with history. When we're reading this material, I think we need to read text as literature, the same way you would read another piece of literature, and another piece of literature that acts and behaves that way. So it's sacred to us. We defend it. We think it happened. Acts of the Apostles, like I brought up earlier, till we read another story like Euripides Bacchae, where Dionysus is captured, imprisoned, and guess how he escapes the prison? An earthquake. The gods, his father Zeus, and he himself with the power, you know, he's a demigod, cause an earthquake that sets him free from the prison. And so many elements of the Acts of the Apostles, which Christians die on the hill, the apologists die on the hill. This happened. And I'm like, when you read Euripides Bacchae, when you read Euripides Orestes or Iphigenia, or you go to Aeschylus's plays and you find the Greek tragedies of the world and you see the most brilliant minds of the Athenians, and you see it, the blueprint, even Greek words that are lifted from those plays that are not found anywhere else in the New Testament or in early Christian literature. It is literally saying, here's the thumbprint. You can see my thumbprint. Once I see it, I can't unsee it. And so they want to say, this happened. And I say, dude, if anything happened underneath or behind it, you'll never know. And there's really good reason to just start with a really fanciful story, a powerful myth about the origin of how Christianity began. But historicity, you know what I mean? Like, definitely not persuaded that. That's what I was trying to get at earlier. I'm writing a script right now where Paul, you remember in Athens when he's before the Epicureans and the Stoics and he's preaching on Mars Hill? That episode, 500 years before the book of Acts was written, go read Euripides, Orestes, go read Aeschylus's story on this. Euripides Bacchae, you can see elements of this as well. But in Orestes, what happens is Orestes actually ends up killing his mother, because his mother, while his father was away on war, his father was Agamemnon, he killed Iphigenia, or attempted to kill Orestes' sister, Iphigenia. His mother and her lover, while the dad was gone, she's sleeping around on the husband, they plotted and killed Agamemnon. In revenge against what his mother did to his father, he kills her. But now he's guilt-ridden and driven mad, which we see another guy who's guilt-ridden and has blood on his hands, the Apostle Paul. His name is Saul at the time. And that is when you see the stoning of Stephen. And so they throw their nets. The elements and parallels, there's so much scholarship on this. It's amazing. But when you realize that 500 years before, there's another story, and the trial for this all happens, guess where it happens at? At the Areopagus, Mars Hill. It happens at the exact same place, and the reaction of the audience to Paul's message, if you read that earlier play, 500 BC, it says something, one of them responds and says that when a man's blood drains into the dust of the earth, he will never rise again, and the anastasis in Greek is used, or anastasis. When you read the Greek in Acts 17 through 19, and you're dealing with Paul Mars Hill, he reverses and says, no, a man can rise from the dead. So he reverses the play from the earlier myth.
Yeah.
Now the question is, did a real dude in real life decide I'm going to, model my actual behavior and my footsteps after an old myth? Or is it more likely whoever wrote this clever, crafty story knew, I want these Gentiles, I want these people who are familiar with Greek philosophy and the Greek gods to come into the fold of Christianity. And I want to prove by the whole book of Acts, Christians are innocent. They're not guilty. They're not guilty of breaking the laws of Rome as they're being accused by the Jews all throughout Acts. So the bad guy becomes the Jews. The good guys become the Romans and the Christians. You're trying to win over the Roman world. You're gonna write a crafty, clever story that is going to bring the Roman world in, and that's exactly what the Book of Acts does, over and over and over and over. So Paul literally becomes the Orestes. He becomes Iphigenia. It's a brilliant rewrite that sometimes reverses the expectation and sometimes is identical. Some of the Greek words are identical. When you see it, you can't unsee it, and so I just love this. I mean, for me, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's super.
Bro, is the Apostle Paul living rent free in Jacob Bourbon's head, or what? He's doing so. He's been like, for the last year, I've been watching his content. Every time I turn it on, and he is going into the life of Paul. And now, the last time I seen him about a week ago, he's talking about there's like 4 or 5 different Pauls. Or I'm not trying to put words in his mouth, but it just seems like he's always got this crazy conspiracy that he's working on with Paul. It's so funny. I swear, he just dreams about Paul all night.
Is it possible that God would use familiar, relatable stuff to act and to relay information? And does that confirm the Old Testament Solomon's what has been done will be done again, and there's no new thing under the sun? Does that maybe everything being a quote unquote copy just proves that why would God use something that's not familiar or believable or relatable? Maybe he would use the status quo. I don't know, man. Even all that wouldn't unconvince me, just because of some of the experiential. There's the Tristan verbiage, the experiential factor of my own life.
So to boil this down, Derek, like at the end of the day, even so, the Bible's a myth. Do you still believe there is a God, and it's just not the God of the Bible, but there is some type of God?
I'm not persuaded. I don't know, of course. I don't try to take the knowledge that I know there's nothing out there. Yeah. I don't really care for I understand that the term God can be defined in several different ways. But every term used in antiquity, as far back as we can go, go back to Xenophanes, go back to the ancient Greeks who were geographers who traveled the world. They saw the gods of all the cultures. They knew what the people of all those cultures believed, and they had images of those deities. Even Yahweh, there were images of Yahweh at one point, the God of the Bible, till that became profane and not allowed. And there were times when some of these cultures were aniconic, so you weren't allowed to have images depicted. And it's not just Israel that they say, thou shalt not make any graven images. You get this in Egypt. You get this in Phoenicia. There are gods that you're not supposed to make images of in certain times at certain points in history. But the point is, the geographers traveled the world and they realized something. Xenophanes is the famous quote, if horses could draw images of their gods, they would look like horses. If dogs could draw images of gods, they'd look like dogs. And the whole point in this quote, and he goes further to point out, all perceptions of God are man-made, and they're not the real God. They're not real. They're always reflective of that culture or that person. And he goes so far to say, if animals could try to understand God, all they would be doing is looking at a mirror. Oh, God looks like me. And in fact, famously said, Albert Schweitzer, the well-known scholar who talks about apocalypticism and eschatology, said, everyone invents Jesus in their own image. Even when they're trying to do historical research, you're going to be trapped in the sin of no matter what. And Jesus is going to arise. It's going to look like what you're imagining him to look like. There's no way to really get the guy, if he ever even existed, which I do even question that. I am open to the idea that he may not have. I lean there might have been a dude. But I cannot prove without a shadow of a doubt that this guy existed or there wasn't a guy, so you can't prove a negative. But your question about, is there something? There are some days, talking about experience, where I wake up and I have an experience, a moment where I'm like, the sun, the world, my kids, this moment, right? Feels so good. But are those chemicals in my brain are, at the end of the day, that make me feel these things? And even if they have utility, but I also want to be empirical. So like Scooby-Doo, everyone says it's a god, everyone says it's a demon, everyone says it's this and that. And my favorite thing about Scooby-Doo is the philosophy is, keep looking, eventually you'll probably find the fingerprint of the human there, or that natural explanation that might make sense of the data. And there's usually at the end of every episode, they unmask the demon or the ghost or the monster,
and it's
always a human.
Yeah.
I think the Scooby-Doo creators were skeptics, but I don't know if this answers your question, but I'm ultimately at the base agnostic of not being able to know if there's something. I'm an ape on a planet who evolved, right? But at the same time, I do not, I don't have that agnostic tendency of thinking, well, there might be, but once in a while when I have like this moment of experience that is just a human experience that I'm like, wow, this is profound. But I know to catch myself and go,
Sure.
Hold on, this may just be a temporary experience that I'm having. Enjoy it. Don't psych yourself out. Because if I went to a mosque and had this experience, I could psych myself out and become a Muslim. Or if I go anywhere else with any other culture, I could psych myself into believing that particular religion. Again, understanding they're all human, in my view, right? So that's just coming from my angle.
Yeah,
Can I ask you a question, Jacob? Is it Jacob down below me here on this? I don't know if we're all in the same line, but you were, how, as an agnostic myself, I don't believe that anything is known or can be known about any God. So that's why I don't believe or disbelieve. So my question to believers is, how do you think you would actually be able to determine if a God was actually communicating with you or something? How would you be able to differentiate that from something that's happening in your own mind?
Yeah, I don't know that I have ever had a moment where God has communicated with me. Just like Don K Preston says, he doesn't know that he's ever experienced the Holy Spirit. I can't definitively say that I've had an experience like that. I just look at the text, the archaeology, the prophecy, the criticism, the miracles, etc., and I go, well, dang, it has to be true. I can honestly say, as of today, I don't want it to be true, but I can't unconvince myself. Life would be much more convenient for me if it weren't true, but I can be unconvinced of it. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I respect that. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I do. I respect that.
The facts goes and the experience. Yeah. I wouldn't weigh that. I would just weigh the textual evidence.
The one danger that I see when people who do things kind of like that, what I've heard some talk going on here, is when you give so much credit to your well-being and to overcoming obstacles and avoiding sin and stuff, and you give so much credit to a particular religion, and I don't care what religion you want to talk about. We can talk about being a Muslim or whatever you want. The problem is that these religions, over time, as we start to uncover the historical record and we start to learn more about science and stuff, these religions get chipped away. And whether they get falsified or not is not even the point. You start chipping away at that. And what happens is when your entire identity is wrapped up in this belief, you cannot allow any chinks in the armor, because your entire worldview is going to come crashing down, and you're going to come crashing down with it. And that's the concern that I have for people, is you end up engaging in cognitive dissonance because you are forced to protect something that you believe you need. When you don't need that external source, and you realize the source is found within yourself, then you don't have to, you know what I'm saying? Then you can be wrong, and it's okay, because I want to align myself with what's right. So it hurts my ego. Sure, I don't want to be wrong. I don't want people to laugh at me. But at the end of the day, that's going to make me stronger, because now I can align myself with what's true. Or at least the best of my ability. You know what I'm saying?
If I can add to what you said there, Jacob, real quick, Jacob, just to add to what he was saying, and you mentioned earlier about walking in front of a car.
Yeah.
And I say, hey, harm reduction, right? Like what Tristan talked about. I'm saying, no, back up. Believe you're Jesus if you absolutely must. But I have to agree with what he just said, in the sense that for me, eventually, in my long tirade of my testimony, was I found myself. It was like, oh, I'm looking for that thing. And then when I realized it was me all along, that famous poem that said, when you saw 2 footprints, I carried you in the sand. I realized it was me and my loved ones. When I couldn't walk, they carried me. It was my wife. It was my kids. And it was really the inner me. You might call that the Christ. You might call that whatever you want. But like, it was me all along who had the ability, the power, the capability of doing those things. And so I was able to look back at those experiences and go, those were profound. Those were real. Those were good. Those were innate human experiences. But I didn't say it was Jesus or the Holy Ghost anymore. I said, it's kind of interesting. The Hindus get the same thing. And the Muslims, like, everyone's saying the same. They're feeling the same. They're doing the. So you call it what you call it. They call it what they call it. I'm a non-Christian and I get experiences. And I go, why do I, the non-Christian, you know what I mean?
I hear both of you. I'm the guy that goes back to the, I think, presuppositionalism. Like you talked about, profound, real, good, any of that. The only way that any of that can be determined, if anything is real or true or good or purposeful or valuable or whatever, is if there is something outside of this very temporal material world. So if the immaterial world exists, you could call that spirit. Then I think purpose, value, morals, etc. exists, which would mean, thanks so much. No, you're good. So I think, yeah, man, like, I'm the guy that's going, hey, life would be much more convenient for me if there was no rules, if there was no God, if there was no whatever. But the only way I can make sense personally of the world, logically, as somebody with a college degree, can go like, dude, yeah, the only way that things can have value or purpose would be because there's something outside of what is testable. If it's not human, it's not just subjective. It's
Have you ever looked into panpsychism or animism by chance? Do you even know what those are?
No, I'm not familiar with either of the terms.
This is where all the precept arguments actually ultimately come from, is this concept of just being a God outside of time and space, and the basis of logic, because that's these precept arguments. I'm in the whole philosophy thing. I get it. It's really attractive because when you lack empirical evidence, what else are you going to use to defend things? So it's the tag and all that other stuff. It's really interesting. But if you know philosophy and you know how to attack the arguments, you can defeat all those arguments using it's called the method of substitution. So I can replace the maximally great being with a maximally great pink unicorn that creates a universe with unicorn farts. You know what I mean? Like you could say the most ridiculous thing.
I'm good with all that. I come from a scientific worldview. I'm a very scientific guy going, yo, damn, we can't even do science without testable, provable, like, uniformity with consistent, like, hey, I can't theorize this unless I can depend on this, which I observe. But the fact that this is observable and testable and provable, and thus I can build a theory on top of it, proves that there's some sort of uniformity and structure to the universe, which seems to hint at a designer slash conductor or whatever. And the explanation for that is God. And I've looked at the Eastern, the Quran, my friend who's a Sumerian guy, like, and just the archaeological proofs, the prophetic proofs. Like, I'm most convinced of the 66 books of the Hebrew Bible. Now, I have a lot of problems with them, and I can also expose contradictions. And for example, the Book of Esther, like, just didn't happen entirely. But, like, I'm also still a Christian, so because of my being convinced of the scientific world going, things happen, things are structured, things are consistent, predictable, which proves we're not in a chaotic void. Whatever the explanation is for that, a common term is God. And when you look at all the different possibilities, explanations, and theories for this supposed God, the one that makes the most sense to me just so happens to be a version of the Christian culture that I was raised in, which is probably really inconvenient to anybody, because I'm aware of the whole whatever religion you were raised in, you'll stay in statistically, which proves nothing. But I don't know. I'm the guy that's going, hey, I'm a believer. I don't even want to be, but to make sense of the world and the fact that we can build Teslas and stuff like that proves God. In my opinion, I'd be open to being disproved.
Well, there's another. I
because
don't want to dissuade anybody from what helps them get through the day.
if you
Honestly, I
give
really
me
don't. But
permission to go rob a bank, that would make my life much easier. I wouldn't have to fight anymore. That'd be great.
I mean, there are more liberal, highly liberal Christian groups now that acknowledge things like historical errors in the Bible and contradictions of the text. They're still Christians, but they really focus on, like, being good to the LGBT community and things of this nature. They're very progressive, I should say, not liberal. They're very
I'm fine
progressive.
with all that.
Yeah. That's
I
that's
have
that's
to
a
hit
lot
the
less.
sack.
That's more harm reduction. Go ahead.
I have to go, guys. It's 1:20. My wife, I know for a fact, creeping through the door right now, and she's cracking the door open and trying to say,
don't get a divorce, Derek. Just know that I'm a fan, and I'd love to chat with you more. And I think you're a gentleman and a professional.
Thank you.
And I'll say this before you go, Derek. I'll say so you go. I really appreciate the debate. And everybody that's here tonight, I really appreciate it. Thanks for the invite as well, Tristan, for the debate. Derek, been watching you for a while. I can't, I've been watching you a long, long time. So, but I appreciate everyone that's here. Tristan, I appreciate it. You all said some really good things that's going to make me actually. I'm sorry, give me just a second. There we go. Yeah, you all said some really good topics tonight.
I just
before I left, so I got a lot to think
pressed
about.
the wrong button.
I was like, oh man, my man just dipped on me. I was trying to give him
That's all right. I'm sorry, I didn't see that you were out too.
I'm leaving.
Yeah.
I'm messing with you, man. But I appreciate the discussion. I think the last topic that you brought up there is it needs to be had in different spaces. This kind of discussion needs to be had. I think what's going to push the ball rolling on this is when this particular discussion, especially on the point of how do you handle these spiritual encounters with these new evolving understanding that there's errors in the book, or how do you reconcile my experiences with, do my experiences confirm the doctrine? There's a lot of questions, and these are some really good conversations to have, and I actually love it. And awesome. So I just I thank you all for the discussion. Hey man, I appreciate it, man. It's all love here. I'm about to hit the sack too, fam. Yeah. I'm over here.
He's in New York. He's in New York, East Coast. I get it.
Derek, be well, bro. Love you, brother.
You too, Michael.
Thanks, Derek.
We'll catch up, guys. All of us.
All right, we'll catch up later. Much love, fam.
Bye. Thank you.
He's a handsome dude, by the way.
Yeah, he's a good-looking guy for sure.
Hey, you guys are more than welcome to talk. You guys, I'm over here just answering all these Facebook messages and textbook messages. By all means, you guys can dip at any time. You have to say bye.
To the guy in the blue hat, I don't see a name. I don't even see anyone's name next to their.
Brian in the blue hat, right?
Yeah, it's Brian. Yeah.
Anyway, to the point, some of the things that were discussed in regards to myth, and it really is hard to put anything in a nice box. Even with Plutarch, when he was writing, I don't know, 50 biographies in the first century, he wrote about historical people and he wrote about historical events, but he included myth. Like, it's a mix of mytho-historical. In other words, the first century, their literary standards are completely different, So I don't have an issue with the liberties that the New Testament authors used to tell stories, because that's really, they didn't have video, and that's largely how they communicated, was through storytelling. And I think that's a question. And there's a view that I hold, which is called accommodationalism, which is that basically God accommodates the evolution of man, if you will. It's language, it's conceptual ability to conceptualize, religion, sort of the religious cultus. So if you hold to accommodationalism through the Judeo-Christian God, he begins with a kind of archaic system that was common amongst the Canaanites, and drawing out a specific people and working through them. And so the question is there any streams throughout the Judeo-Christian faith that can or have any probative value, or kind of, I see like written text as more of like signposts that lead us to what's absolute, which is, you could say, God. I mean, if you believe that there's a God. But so I think most religions, they're sort of incomplete stories that point to something greater, which we call God. But why did we evolve to that? And so there's a kind of, there's a epistemology in how we've come to like evolve into a religious, or a belief in this greatest conceivable being. But is there some truth to that reality, that we've evolved to that point because that's what I guess God intended? Because in other words, there has to be some sort of intention. If we weren't here at some point, if we're here now, that means we weren't here in the past. And so why is this here now the way it is now? And, human beings are able to contemplate not just each other like mammals, but we can contemplate the mysteries of the universe, or we can contemplate how things work, how the clock works, which is kind of unique, I think. But anyway, so I hold to more of a accommodationalist view, that I don't have to hold to biblical inerrancy, where everything is, God has spoken. These are dictated words from God. I see God working through these religions, and for me, because obviously I was born in America, I've held to the Judeo-Christian portrait or image of God, if you will. But for me, it's amazing because I've had encounters or spiritual experiences. So that to me points to the reality of, or existence of God, not necessarily the written text, though it's been helpful for me to formulate, my own concept of God, especially the Jesus figure, especially full preterism, which to me is the best, has the best image of God, because it does away with the ancient Near Eastern baggage. When you get to the end of the book in Revelation, it's like, okay, God is like the sun, and he's universal, and there's no tree of the knowledge of good and evil. There's no more Satan or Hades or Moses or Adam. It's like, okay, God is here, and you're either aligning yourself under the sun of the divine, or you're not, and there's no punishment awaiting if you reject that. So anyway, just look into accommodationalism. Maybe it's something that if you've had spiritual experiences and maybe you believe in God, it'll help reconcile some of the discrepancies within, say, the written text. That's all.
I liked how you worded that. That was nice at the end.
No, I mean, definitely. I mean, I appreciate that. And even so more. Well, just to be clear, were you speaking directly to me, or you were just? I was getting ready to hang up. I didn't.
Yeah, I was speaking to you, brother.
Okay. I just want to make sure I was listening, but I appreciate that. I think the experiences can help us possibly resolve that, and that's something that's still processing. As far as the Judeo-Christian, as far as the myth goes, when you bring up the myths and their stories, I agree with you. I believe that as good as the Three Little Bears, or if we ask, what do we learn from the story of the little boy who cried wolf? You're going to say, well, I learned that we shouldn't lie. And even though it's not really a true story, we learn principles because this is a modern story that helps us teach our children and not to lie. So these are principles. The same way I look at that, the same way I also look at the literature, on the Bible. It teaches us principles and things from a cultural perspective to help preserve the community and the mission of that community. And whether those stories are, 100% true or not, the mission and intention starts to come clear from that perspective. So that's just kind of how I look at it.
I appreciate the exchange.
But much love, guys. I gotta go.
That's not how most people look at it, though. So,
yeah, I mean, but there are a lot of fundamentalists too that just believe in, a certain version of Christianity that is untenable. It's hard to. You look under the hood, and it's not biblical inerrancy. It's not, infallibility. It's not this kind of, God said it and therefore it's true. There's a lot of nuances to the literature that we read is the Bible, like Genesis. And so not too many people take an accommodationalist view. I think, as you grow up and you sort of mature and try to reconcile, a lot of the discrepancies or say contradictions or just in general, you're growing in knowledge. But some people stay in that fundamentalist box. And I'm glad I escaped that. But it doesn't take away from my belief in God and the value that Jesus, I do believe. I am a conservative and a liberal at the same time, which is weird. But I don't force my views. I think if you're going to force something, you force love. That's something that's
that's very well said.
Yeah, that's the truest sign of spirituality and close. In the 1 John, it says, this is how you know God, that you love your fellow man. If you don't love your fellow man, you don't know God. So don't preach to me that you know and love God. Show me that you know.
Right.
Love.
Right. Exactly.
And that's why Jesus said you would bear fruit. And that's how they would know the believer, not because I can quote a Bible verse or I can fight about a Bible verse or have these divisions and tribal distinctions. That's not true Christian spirituality in my mind.
The infighting that happens, and it's not just in Christianity. It happens in every single religion. There's multiple sects of every single. I've studied not all, but I've studied this for a very long time. And there's always this infighting. People. The phrase that I hear, because we're here in America, so obviously Christianity is going to be a big one for us. But when I hear Christians telling other Christians who's not the real Christian, and it's not my fight. I'm an agnostic. It's really up to you guys to sort that all out. But I shake my head at that kind of stuff. I'm like, man, these guys are just going at each other's throats right now. That does not help anybody's cause.
Yeah, I was even saying that in the comments of the debate. Was just like, I wish, especially preterists in particular, like can the preterists just stop fighting and can we all just like kind of try to figure this out
bro,
together?
I didn't know that was you. I seen that. Yeah. I didn't know that was you. I did see some of those comments and I was like, oh, somebody's in here trying to actually make some peace, because there was so much mud flying in that comments, and that happens in debates. I think I touched on that earlier, when we talked about the whole debate scheme, which is why I prefer to just have conversations and stuff. But mud flies. You're absolutely right about that. I think, it's not a good look when a skeptic or somebody that's
from like there's individuals like full preterism. There's a lot of people would consider that as heresy, which is ironic because the Orthodox Christianity is a far cry from the original church in the first century. So what is authentic Christianity? Is it what it is today, or what is it more resemble what it was, back in the day? But so a lot of the mudslinging is between futurist dispensationalists and the full preterists, because
I'm saying even between full preterists, like Richard Eckhart and Don Preston. Richard Eckhart's always
he's obsessed.
Hammering. Yeah, he's crazy a little bit for sure.
He's obsessed. But there's always going to be those kinds of.
It's not just him though. It just seems to
the CBD and the IBV. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. I get it.
It's like, let's just figure this out together to come up with like the best answer instead of just like fighting about it and then like calling the other one a heretic. Like, give me a break.
Yeah, Daniel Rogers, when he had his debate, and you can see his struggle. He's like, guys, what's this all about? I just want to see Jesus being realized in the real world. And
I like Daniel.
Let's build the kingdom, and let's give reasons for our hope, for what we believe. And it's not going to be in kind of, verbal discourse and verbal judo back and forth. So I resonated a lot with Daniel's position. I don't know if he articulated as well as I would like, because he was more of the passive rather than the aggressor in the debate. But
you're talking about the Jason DaCosta one, right?
Yeah.
Jason walked all over him for sure.
He controlled that narrative. Yeah. But Tristan, just want to say thank you for having me on. I don't know what you're doing over there, but
I don't think
Tristan, you there?
Tristan.
Oh, he's on mute, maybe. But Mr. Agnostic, if you had a question, I don't know if there's any other questions, but
no, it's my name's Objective Ethics is my YouTube name. So if you ever see me, trolling around or whatever, it sounds like we touch a lot of the same bases. It's Objective Ethics. You're welcome to hit me up with a chat or anything. You can call me Daniel. That's my real name. I don't care about that, but nobody's going to remember that. Objective Ethics is a really easy one.
Daniel, what's your you're an agnostic, so you're open to the idea of there being a God. But
Absolutely.
You're not convinced of any organized religions. Hasn't convinced you that their God exists, so to speak.
Correct. Yeah, correct. I do think I mentioned to the gentleman who's not in here anymore, that there's some very interesting discussions to be had about panpsychism or deism or things of this nature, because, it's just an interesting, at the very least, it's very interesting, because I do understand the creationist's point of view, that it does seem really improbable that all this just kind of came out of the mud. I don't have a problem with a naturalistic explanation. It satisfies me, but I certainly understand why people would want to look for something deeper. That's a natural part of the human brain. That's just part of how we function as a species. So I definitely get that. Don't get me wrong there. And I am totally open to, hey, if Jesus walked into my front door right now, I'd be all over it. I'd have a lot of questions though. What's with all this killing babies and stuff going on in the Old Testament? That'd be the first question I'd have. But other than that, I'm not an anti-theist by any stretch of the imagination. I just think that we need to focus on harm reduction, and a person can be a good person if they're a Christian or a Buddhist or a Muslim. That doesn't mean you can't be a good person.
Are you talking about killing babies as like the firstborns?
You mentioned harm.
Like the first.
Well, in the Old Testament, and there's so many stories we could go through in the Old Testament where God is whacking babies left and right in the Old Testament, and that's not even counting the flood. But then if you really look in today's day and age, I know a lot of people now abortion is a tough issue. I have a really tough time with that one. I don't know if I really have a comfortable position, but I have to take the position that the mother's the one that's alive. The mother's the one that we absolutely have all the evidence for, that's a human being. The rest of the stuff is really up for debate. And the fact of the matter is that when Christians or creationists or whoever is talking about, anti-abortionists, I should say, they're saying you can't be killing babies or whatever. Well, the 1 in 4, I think the statistics are, 1 in 4 babies die in the womb from natural causes. Okay, if this is God's creation, babies are just getting killed all over the place, and I know people say they wash this away by saying all babies go to heaven, and I've heard a lot of different, and that just leads to the question, well, why don't we just kill all the babies then? Why don't we just do them a favor and just give them the fast track to heaven? At that point, we're doing them a favor. So I don't really understand, the whole baby thing.
Let me jump in real quick. So, are you referring to like the story of like how Moses is saved? Like, the Pharaoh orders all the babies to be killed, and then Moses
you've got that. you've got when what is the Passover lamb story where God tells him to put the blood on the, on the outside, and then he comes through and sends the angels through and kills all the kids, and then you've got
that's the firstborn that I was talking about earlier. Yeah. So, but sometimes you realize that the part of the story is it's not God. The Pharaoh's the one who ordered the babies to be killed. That wasn't God.
Yeah, but God's got the power to stop that. But you've also got because like, why didn't he just say, go put the blood on everybody's door? You know what I'm saying?
Well, the point was to rain down the curses, like, or whatever, like, on them. That was the point of that story. So
and you've got the everybody's door. Kids. What is that? The Elijah story, the 42 kids that get killed by the bears.
Yeah.
And then you've got
that's not. It's probably not kids in that story. If you look into that, it's probably more teenagers who are messing with the prophet and stuff. I'm not saying like that's cool, but
yeah, that doesn't make it any better from my worldview. And then you've got another story where I always get these confused. I'm so tired right now. It's getting very late for me. But there's a story where I can't. It's not Jacob, but who is it that he sends in? He tells. Oh, he gets so mad when they don't do it too. But he sends him and he says, "Kill every man, woman, child, and animal, but just don't kill the virgin girls. But kill everybody else. Kill all the kids and everything." Then you've got. But the biggest thing is you've got the flood. I mean, you can kind of wash away a lot of that stuff and try and pretend like it's not God doing this or that, whatever. But you've got the flood narrative, and for anybody to try and say, "Well, it doesn't specifically say there were any babies." That's just, come on, man. If you believe that's a true story.
Well, yeah, that's a dumb argument. You've had somebody say that.
It is a pretty bad argument. It's horrible.
Daniel, on a flip side, it's like, okay, so, but without the existence of God, how do you ground a basis for saying something is good or bad, or I guess absolutely bad or absolutely evil? You know what I'm saying?
Sure. No, I've heard this argument before, and I appreciate where you're coming from with it. But here's the thing: is that once you step back from the situation and realize that if you just take my worldview for just a second and realize that we made all these religions, we're the one that made these rules up in the first place. We didn't need someone to make them up for us, and you could actually do the historical research and find out how these rules have evolved over time, and you can see how.
That's not ontology.
And no, I understand what you're saying, but from the ontological argument, if you want to actually get into the ontological argument, then we're getting into a whole another ballgame of is that even a valid argument? Because that becomes a presuppositional argument that there needs to be a creator, and I don't think there does. I think that evolutionary processes, if you just study evolution for what it is, and just for the sake of argument, grant that evolution is a thing and that we all started as monkeys and we worked our way up. If you look at this process and you study the ancient civilizations, and then you study humans before they were even when we were hunter-gatherers, and look at them before that, and you see this evolution of civilization building, community building, and you see these ethics and morals, the grounding of it all, that if I want to not have somebody kick my front door down and murder my wife and murder me, the best way that I can make sure that that's not happening is to not go around and doing that to other people. It starts with me. It's the basis of morality right there.
Yeah, but that's epistemology. So how we've evolved, and I understand, because I'm open to that as well. I'm not poof, God waved the magic wand, and I think it's likely that there was some sort of evolution process, both with the universe and with sentient life. I guess for me, it's like I have this odd drawing towards the transcendence, and it's like it's hard. The Judeo-Christian puts a kind of face to it, if you will, but I'm basically there seems to be some sort of intentionality between the existence of good and evil, not how we've come to know good and evil, but the reality of it is interesting to me. It's just because there's no basis. If a society wants to basically feed on the weak, or to rape and to pillage or to steal, that's their harm reduction, right? That's what's in their best interests. But I'm wondering if that happened to them, how they would feel about it. So there's a feeling of good and evil, but I think that there's a reality to it that's inherent that I think it's beyond just evolution. It's meant to be, like intentionality. But I can't prove that. I'm not going to sit here and say I can prove it.
Well, I'm actually working on a theory right now, and I don't have it fully developed. I'm still kind of fleshing things out, so I don't want to get too much into it because I don't want to give too much away until because I can't justify it all because I haven't figured out all the premises yet. But I actually do go by objective ethics because I do think that there is an objective truth. You know, there are what they call hard laws, basically, in physics and things of this nature. They're immutable facts, right? That just are, whether we like them or not, no matter how we try and get around them. They're just things that just are in existence in the material world, and we call them immutable facts in physics.
Like
or it's things of this nature, right? Exactly right. And so I do think that we have evidence that something can exist, and we can think of math. Math is technically the language, but we can think about what math actually talks about, the thing that math actually refers to, and that just exists. It just is a thing. It's the law that governs the universe, basically. If there is such a thing as a moral code that's out there, I'm not opposed to that, and I'm actually trying to work out a theory for that. The problem is because I try to always be critical and really question everything that I'm thinking to make sure that I'm not just trying to get into my own head, get in my own echo chamber, and just run with any random idea, and that I'm not gullible to other people's random ideas. And I really cannot get around, justify, because of what you said, and that's the key part at the end of your statement there. I don't have any evidence whatsoever to replace the naturalistic explanation with any theory other than philosophy. I have a great philosophical argument for it, but it's very similar to philosophical arguments that people would use for any other transcendental argument, such as tag or whatever else you want to go to. You know what I'm saying? So I can't say I'm doing any better than the theists in that regard, because that's what these things, I think these arguments are coming down to when we don't have the evidence. Until somebody figures out a mechanism inside the brain or something that, because we are doing a lot of cool stuff with the brain, but until we get some kind of empirical evidence, the transcendental argument is the only way to approach this. It's always going to come from philosophy.
Yeah, for sure, because we weren't there, so we're using a kind of forensic science, right? In other words, we can't observe something that can't be repeated, which is obviously the creation of the universe, the creation of first life. But I think to me, it's like you mentioned law, say mathematics, or say the law of teleonomy, or the anthropic principle, right?
Sure.
In other words, why is it there's within these systems there appears to be, if you look at a cause and then a first cause, why is there intelligence built into whether it's the universe itself, or whether it's allowing for the earth to be here in the sun, and this anthropic idea that there's 100 dials and it's all finely tuned. But I think for sentient life, I'm so awestruck with just life or sentient life. It's like a mystical experience to me. But anyway, the point is that whether it's math or logic or love or these kind of metaphysical experiences or realities, I do think it's within the seed of it all. In other words, if you peel it back, if the Big Bang is true, even if there's a multiverse, it still has to go back to one universe that started this kind of
No. There's a better theory than that. I don't want to cut you off. Yeah, I mean, as far as I believe, and I believe this for the last 20, 30 years, when I read Paul Davies' book, The Mind of God, which I don't know if you've read that book or not, but it might blow your mind. It blew my mind. And he's a deist or a Christian or something like that, but he talked about a theory that's actually had never heard of before. It's called the Big Bounce. And there are other theories that are similar to this, but basically, using the laws of physics, the universe has always existed. So the Big Bang is a specific point that created this version of the universe. But if you break your mind from thinking that's the beginning of everything, and then it came out of nothing, because that's not what the Big Bang actually teaches. It's then you have to say, okay, so the matter was maybe some kind of a quantum foam or a quantum field or whatever, and you basically, what's that?
it's when you get to the point, and beyond the point is undefinable because we only see beyond the point. Beyond
it is. So it becomes it's all mathematical at this point. But basically, the concept is that the universe is eternal. Is what I'm getting to. Matter, energy, time, all that's an eternal concept. It didn't actually just start. There was no beginning.
I would disagree, though. Space, time, and matter is a product of the universe that we live in, that we can, through the radiation glow and the expansion rate, we know that.
Yep.
Okay, let's say there was a bounce. We're string theory.
Yeah.
Beyond, we don't know what was prior to the bounce because all of that is a speculation. So we don't know. We understand space, time, and matter, but past the point, or when you trace it back to the point, beyond that, it's undefinable. We don't know if there was matter or space or even energy as we know it. And there may be energy that it's undefinable in some sense, but we only define things within our universe. That's what I'm saying. Beyond that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. No, when I said, I'm sorry, like I said, it's getting kind of late. I didn't articulate that very well, but when I said time, space, and matter are eternal, not to say that they didn't start here with this universe. Matter probably did come there, some form of matter. Physics were different at one point in this quantum field. You know what I'm saying? But it still, it always goes back to eternity. So we get a universe. The universe, it's like breathing. You breathe in, breathe out. Similar theories would be like the Big Bang, the Big Crunch. Then you get a Big Bang, you get a Big Crunch, and it's just this eternal process. So it doesn't have to be something that had a quote unquote beginning per se. Mathematically, it doesn't need to.
Well, there's a beginning. It's just you're questioning whether that it's an ultimate beginning. In other words, a beginning of when you get to the expansion and in the retraction, there is a point in which now you're expanding again. So
yes, there's a beginning to this universe. There's a beginning to what we're experiencing right now. Yes, yeah, but that is a point of perspective, not a point of reality or the ultimate. You know what I mean? Yeah.
But I guess the question is that why? But we're not going to have an answer to that. But now within the crunch or the string or the beginning of this universe, I don't know if you feel the same way, but why is there almost like intelligence built in it? Now there's chaos, but chaos doesn't mean a lack of intelligence, but see, it's the intelligence that boggles my mind, and
that's what I was gonna. I didn't want to interrupt you, and I'm sorry I did at that point. But there was a couple things you said that I was like, okay, I got to remember this point to bring this up, and I didn't want to stop you. And I feel like I kind of broke your momentum, which I apologize for because I'm not trying to be disrespectful.
I did the same. I apologize.
So though you made a comment, and I think that when you said this phrase, whether it was intentional or just kind of something habitually that we tend to do, depending on our worldview, is you mentioned fine tuning. It seems fine tuned. And then here you kind of touched on that the chaos, even though there's chaos, that doesn't denote or delineate intelligence per se. We don't know. We can't. One's not inherent or synonymous with the other. I do think, or inherent to the other. Sorry. I do think that we give too much credit, depending on our worldview, to this quote unquote fine tuning concept. And it's because there is all this chaos. And in fact, I mentioned the 1 in 4 babies dying in the womb. That to me does not echo fine tuning at all. You know what I mean? That to me applies to the face.
There could be a lot of other factors that have to do with that. It's about environmental factors that were.
But yeah. Well, I agree with you, brother. And I'm so sorry because I know we talked before, but the names aren't up here, and I can't remember your name. Can you remind me what your is it? Nick. Okay, brother. It's good to see you again, by the way. No, I agree with you 100%. But as far as I know, and maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong, but are all those factors you're talking about having naturalistic explanations?
No. I'm saying potentially that could be something that we as a species are doing wrong that are creating a less formidable womb that's causing problems.
Well, wouldn't that be a natural explanation though? Wouldn't that fall into that definition still if we're doing it?
Daniel, your statistics
we have free will.
But I understand your point because it was worse back, millions of years ago or thousands of years ago. But today the mortality rate is about it fluctuates between 15 to 4 out of every 1,000. It's no way 1 out of every 4 births lead to death. I don't know where you got that stat from, but
I just recently looked it up. Actually, it's the what site did I get that? I did just recently look that up like 3 or 4 days ago. See what the current number was. That's where I literally got that.
Yeah,
from.
yeah. Look it up again. Maybe I've looked at. I
It's
remember it.
I want to say the Chicago Institute, or maybe it was Chicago Pediatrics or something like that. Had done a study on it. Is putting that out.
Yeah, that seems way too high.
Because I don't think we live in harmony as much as like we could, and we've made some choices as human beings that just are retarded choices. All the plastics and chemicals and stuff like that has effects on hormones, and so there's definitely like better ways of doing things, and we've kind of chosen some ways that maybe are cheaper, easier, that can affect that type of thing. I'm not saying that's the only reason, but
I agree with you on premise and in principle. Frankly, I agree with you. I'm a big river rat. I'm into the, like I said, I build boats. I'm really into the, preserving our waterways and our oceans and our rivers and lakes and streams and all that stuff. I'm really big into that. But I still don't understand how we're set, because you're talking about terraforming essentially at this point. And that is another part of natural explanation. That's we're an animal, we're a species. This is all, unless I'm missing something. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth here, but everything I'm hearing you say is part of the natural world. We haven't introduced any kind of a deity or a miracle or a curse or anything into this narrative yet. Is that ultimately what you're thinking this is a result of? Some kind of the fall? Like basically, does this go back to the fall of man, or is this just?
I don't take that view at all. I don't think I take like I don't know if you heard me and Tristan. I know you jumped on maybe later, but I take like a covenant creation type view, not a materialist creating view. Yeah.
Then this all to me falls under a natural explanation. You're talking about the terraforming that we do to the planet and to our own species. That we're not necessarily. And again, this doesn't mean this flies in the face of fine tuning. If we were finely tuned, we wouldn't do this to ourselves.
Well,
no, I think that's
if we have free will.
Though, go ahead. I'm sorry, brother. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, I'll let you talk. But I'm saying if we have free will, God's given us free will. I mean, it wasn't God that said use a bunch of plastics and make a bunch of chemicals. We as human beings made that choice, and now you reap what you sow. Like.
But the chemicals that are coming from that we are taking and poisoning ourselves with come from the creation. Couldn't the creation have been created without those chemicals being involved, or couldn't we be immune to those toxins in the first place?
But I'm saying, like, we also are manipulating stuff in a lab that isn't potentially how it was created to be used, and should just not be done that way. And we decided to do things that way. I mean that's a little bit of a kind of a ridiculous argument, in my opinion. Like, oh well, we should be immune to nuclear bombs. Like, God knew we were going to create nuclear bombs. We should have skin that can resist nuclear bombs. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's a silly argument, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I mean, I see your point. Go ahead, brother.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought. Go ahead.
Well, I was just because I see your point. I don't think it's quite the red herring that you're essentially implying it is. I think that I think there's an argument to be made that if this God is all powerful, that a lot of these things could be prevented. Maybe they're fine tuning. To me, if I was going to create things and I had my way of doing things, I could certainly come up with mentally a different way. Now, people could say, well, the physics wouldn't work with your creation. Is this all powerful God restricted to the immutable laws that we were talking about of physics? I mean, at what point are we gonna?
I don't think you're getting the point. It's like a cosmic. I mean, so I feel like because there's a God, there must be a utopia where it's all hugs and kisses and rainbows all day. Who's to say that was God's objective when he did this to begin with? Maybe he wants that cosmic drama. He wants to see you choose in the face of adversity to still be like, I love you, God. You're still good. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, you're
okay. Let's take the human factor out of it. Yeah. Let's take the human factor out of it then, and let's say, what about when the asteroid comes and crashes into the Gulf of Mexico and wipes out 70% of all living things?
Yeah, I don't know how to think about that, honestly.
Well, let me comment on that if I could real quick. Basically, it is interesting how, because if you know anything about the formation of the Earth, it went through that kind of and intense heat and compacting and with all the asteroids, etc. I don't know. I just find it. I see the process of evolution, or the process of incorporating chaos to produce order. I don't think that disproves God. I think if God is spirit, or a kind of another something that is not limited to space, time, and matter. So in other words, space, time, and matter, this is not God himself, I don't think. So for someone who is self-existing, how do you create something that is not self-existing? Anyway, I'm just thinking it through. But what I'm trying to say is that life thrives on chaos. In other words, even with natural disasters, it's like short-term damage leads to, maintain ecosystems and diversity, enriches soils and regulates climate. And it's like the earth is a living organism. And like the human body is a living organism, and it goes through its own earthquakes, its own ripples, its own shedding of cells and kind of deconstruction to reconstruct. I don't know. I think that's the world we live in, and maybe it's the optimal world to serve God's optimal purpose, which is that it produces the most amount of people coming to him. So I think that's a possibility. In other words, there is suffering. It's the world God need, but there is some sort of, I guess you could say, good coming out of suffering, which I guess if there was no suffering, now there may be an exorbitant amount of it, but I know in my life, it's the suffering that has brought me to my knees, if you will, and brought me to a stronger relationship with God. So I'm thinking it through. I'm not like a philosopher or anything, but I don't think that chaos or like, say, natural disasters or the asteroids, how it compacted and molded the world that we know called Earth, detracts from the existence of God.
Well, I think you gentlemen are both making very good points. I just want to make that clear. I think you guys are both making very good points and articulating yourselves very well. I'm really the one who's having a hard time keeping up because I'm getting kind of tired. But I would say that I agree with you 100%, or we can at least point to this, that if that asteroid didn't smack down and wipe out the dinosaurs, we wouldn't be here. If you believe in evolution, we wouldn't even be here. So you could certainly make that argument. The other thing I agree with 100% is that none of these arguments disprove God. If we disproved God, I wouldn't be an agnostic. I'd be a hard atheist. And if we proved God, I wouldn't be either. I'd be a whatever God it was. I'd be a theist of some kind. So I agree with you. You're absolutely right about that. They do not disprove God, and that's why you'll never ever, no matter how many, smart ass comments I may make about God killing babies or whatever. This is not me claiming there is a God or isn't a God. I don't actually believe either way. I'm completely agnostic about it. So show me the evidence, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, and that's the struggle. Sometimes I'm like, God, there's no way there is no way there's not a God. And at some points I'm like, well then, with all this evil and suffering, how is there a God? And I wrestle with that. But and I'll tell you on a personal level. So I've had several experiences with God. So I'm Greek. And I'm more of a thinker and an intellectual. I'm not making this up. Before you and all, I've had experiences that I know that just weren't, hallucinations or just sort of I conjured up with my mind. That's wild, because I do struggle with, okay, I sense like I look at my wife, right? I look at my child, I look at the sun. I'm like, I look at some of the organization in the world, and I'm like, how is there not a God? But sometimes I'll look at the suffering I'll put on the news, and it's like, what's going on? But I guess for me, because I've had what I would call spiritual experiences, I'm convinced God exists, but I don't always have the words to communicate it, or I don't have like the proof. So that's weird, because there's something called the hiddenness of God, which philosophers have struggled with, right? Okay, they believe in God, but why is God so hidden a lot of the times? But why does God provide anchors? In other words, in the Old Testament, God would have allow these experiences, and then the patriarchs would build an altar as a point of remembrance. So for me, I've only had maybe on my one hand, say four solid experiences. But those solid experiences of the existence of God has anchored me to maintain that belief. And I'll be honest with you, I know that you did your success is self-will. I love self-help with Tony Robbins and The Power Within and Eckhart Tolle. I'm into self-help as well. But for me, I don't know what it is, but having a relationship with God for me has produced the best version of myself. I don't know why that is. Before you, and I'm speaking honestly, when I'm not maintaining a relationship with God, maybe it's because of my upbringing and some trauma and some issues, I have a tendency to be self-absorbed, to gratify myself, to take for greed, to sleep with as many women as, and I'm married for 30 years, and 25 years, sorry. But this weird, I have this tendency when I'm not maintaining a life of devotion before God, it produces the least best version of myself. Now, have I tried a life without, God and maybe did it all my own? Like if I said, all right, God doesn't exist, I'm gonna muster up and I haven't done that. I'm not saying that that's not possible, but I'm just saying for me personally, and I work in a penal system, and I've dealt with addicts, and I've seen how this kind of anchor with spirituality or God has helped tremendously. I mean, life transformations. So I agree it can happen on their own, because there are atheists who just thrive and are successful, but I've seen on the other end too. So what do you make of that? I don't know. Like why do people seem to thrive with spirituality? And there's some science behind spirituality too. Prayer life and going to church. There are cognitive and neurological benefits. I don't know what Tristan's saying over there. Tristan, you're on mute.
Tristan, are you on me? Is Jacob lurking? Is that Jacob lurking in the chat? I think you muted yourself, Tristan. Oh, he probably unplugged
Anyway,
his.
Daniel, I'm mumbling, brother. I'll give you the last word. I gotta hit. It's 2:00, and I should hit the.
No,
bell.
I think I'm picking up everything you're putting down, brother. I do. I think those are some very valid points. That's another reason. Like when I do have discussions with religious people and stuff like that, the one thing I'll talk about the history of the Bible and errors I see and contradictions, and I'll talk about all that kind of stuff. But the one thing I will never try to discredit is somebody's personal, I guess you want to call it personal testimony or personal relationship with their God. That's sacred ground as far as I'm concerned. Whatever kind of personal thing you have, it would be extremely disrespectful of me to try and tell you that's a hallucination or that's all in your head. I try to be very careful about how I couch those kind of things, because that at the end of the day, you have your right as a human being to your own feelings. And if there's something that you think motivates you to make better decisions than you would without that motivator, then it would be highly irresponsible of me to try and talk you out of that,
Oh, that's beautiful, brother. You articulated that beautifully, and I appreciate that. And I think that's like, for me, I validate your journey. You know what I'm saying? And I hope atheists or hard atheists, even agnostics can validate the other side as well. And I think that's a good, having that bridge is good, because there's no eradicating religion. There's no eradicating belief in God. Although hard atheists want that, it's going to be very difficult to do, because we do have a built-in mechanism. Like you brought up animism and shamanism. Why did these ancient cultures, look beyond sort of the physical? I don't know, but it isn't.
Well, there is actually a scientific theory behind that. It's called, we have something in our brain called the HADD. It's the hyperactive agency detection device. And so this is something that scientists have discovered. It fires in the central cortex of the brain, and we have an inherent need to discover agency, and it's how we've evolved as a species. It's really, if you want to look into, I don't want to keep you up all night talking to you about it, but there actually is. HADD, hyperactive agency detection device. It's very interesting. But so we have it's in our very being as who we are as a species to want to find an agent and apply an agency to something, which is what gets us to so it causes us to discover and to learn and to challenge and to push ourselves. And so there's a really highly beneficial, which is why it's an evolutionary trait that has evolved so highly, is because it's extremely beneficial.
Right, but I go to the question, well, is it intentional? Is it part of intelligent sort of design in a sense? But because I don't see evolution as disproving God. I think God could very well have used evolution to bring about the human species. So whenever you talk about, well, this is how we've come to know something, like that's epistemology. And so I get to I try to think of the ontology of it, like the why. So that drives me more than the epistemology, but it's all helpful. But this inherent, like you said, it causes you to discover. And what if there are things to discover beyond the physical? I think that's we've discovered subatomic particles and the quantum realm and obviously the universe itself. But what if it also is just allows us to discover sort of the transcendent, the prime mover, or the first cause, if you will, or we would call God. I don't know. It's food for thought. But Tristan, he's like, Tristan, you there, bro?
Don wore him out.
You're on mute, but
You're still on mute.
We can call it a night, bro, because I think you're probably shot. But I never met you. What's your name on the bottom right?
My name's Nick.
Nick, I've seen you before with Tristan, so it's a pleasure to actually meet you. And
yeah, dude, I'd love to have some more conversations with you. I like your style. I like what you're saying. I think we'd have some good conversations.
Yeah, for sure. Daniel, you're a sweet guy, man. God bless you.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, much love and respect. So, Tristan.
All right, man. I appreciate you. I'm gonna get out of here too. I hate to leave Tristan right now because he's probably like, as soon as he gets his microphone hooked up, everyone's gonna be gone. And I'd like to see if Jacob is gonna come in here. That's a rare opportunity. I'd like to ask him how many different Pauls he's found yet.
Jacob.
Does that History Valley right here?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Jacob. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Jacob Berman. Yeah.
He's not talking about Jacob the fighter. No. So I was going to ask you about this quote that you put up. Who wrote that? Because when is Paul not making it about making it imminent? I don't know any.
Preterists can't explain a different version of Jesus' return in the New Testament. In some of Paul's return. Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, Jeremy Stolfus, I think. He's hit on this, and it's actually a valid point if you consider the critical scholarly consensus, which is obviously there's Paul's authentic letters and there's Paul's.
Sure. I'd have to see the verses.
But here's the thing: if you consider Paul's authentic letters, obviously he did consider imminency, even in some of his later writings. I don't know if it was Romans, but I'm sure Jacob can validate that or not. So I'm open to pseudepigrapha. Hey, what's up, Jacob?
Oh, fine. How are you?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, there he is.
Now.
Oh, all right. I don't know what happened. The connection.
Jacob, how many different Pauls have you found so far?
Well, that's kind of a interesting question. It's not so much that there were different Pauls. It has more to do with individuals that I think are hijacking Paul's identity. And that's what I was talking about in some of the previous episodes I did on my channel. recently, because again, it has to do with the issue, and I know some people want to rationalize it and try to explain it away, why the church fathers say some very strange stuff. Like Jerome, when he talks about Saul of Giscala, after AD 70, he says that this Saul was he claimed to be a Benjamite, Hebrew of Hebrews, and stuff like that. Can Jerome be logically talking about the same human being as Paul, who wrote the letters before the Jewish war, supposedly? It doesn't make sense. So what is Jerome talking about? And that's really what I want people to think about, whether they agree that there's an issue there or not. And over time, it's slow, but over time, more scholars are coming to the conclusion that there's a problem with the dating of Paul's letters. You see the Gospels being dated later and later in time. And I don't want to talk about this too much because the topic of this discussion is preterism. Is it true or not? I don't want to get too lost into this, but basically to end what I'm saying is that slowly over time, you see that scholarship is moving the text later. Now some are holding out for an earlier dating of the text, like Jonathan Bernier. I've had Jonathan Bernier on the show a couple of times. I disagree with him, but I found his arguments to be interesting.
Well, I've always felt that Paul was highly interpolated, but that's just my agnostic view. Kind of, it's for theists to fight about that kind of stuff.
Well, even Richard Carrier, doesn't he? I thought he's got, I know, an article about Paul because there were scholars trying to push maybe a Roman invention or later 2nd century. And so he holds to Paul. I think he leans towards Paul being at least the authentic letters early within the 1st century or in the 1st century. And then even Clement, I don't know if that's unique, but even he thinks Clement was pre-70. But
yeah, he thinks that 6 of the 13 epistles are authentic to Paul. Yeah. I think I've heard that he recently concluded that Philemon isn't authentic. Whether that was a recent change in his mind, or if it happened much earlier, I don't remember. But he did say, I believe he said that Philemon is inauthentic as well.
Well, pushing it to Clement, that pretty much puts it right into Marcion's back door. Then, are we saying that Marcion might be involved in this? Because I've heard that before.
Well, I've heard that before too.
He's talking about First Clement. And
First Clement.
So I did Clement of Alexandria does have a strange passage in which in his Trimata, he claims that Marcion and Paul are contemporaries.
That is interesting.
Now, then the question becomes, which Paul is he talking about? Is he talking about the original Paul the Apostle or someone else pretending to be Paul? Because we have to remember, and so some people get confused. I understand why, because it's a lot to keep track of. A church father, when it's talking about a Paul living a later period, it may not really be Paul, but they're talking about a different individual pretending to be Paul, and that's what they're aware of. And you see this in 2 Thessalonians even, in which there's a verse in there that says, be aware of a letter as if it came from us, but don't believe it.
Right.
It's not.
Right. Now, in this theory, is Saul still the first Paul?
Could you repeat that, please? I didn't make all that out.
According to this narrative, is Saul still Paul, or there's two different authors?
Well, in this situation, there are multiple Sauls. It's not just one. Because, and I mentioned this recently in the text called the Acts of Paul. There's a ridiculous story in there. This is where we get the story of Paul's death under Emperor Nero. It's a late 2nd century text, which Paul gets beheaded, and then his head gets essentially reattached. And it's not exactly explained how that's supposed to happen, but Paul basically is seen alive again. So the head gets reattached, apparently. It's ridiculous. And there's a soldier in the story, a Roman soldier, I believe, called Cestus, which is interesting because there's a Roman commander called Cestius, who was involved in the beginning of the Jewish war. And there was a Saul that fled Herodium when the rebels were setting it ablaze. And Saul appeared before Emperor Nero in order to lay the blame of causing the war upon Governor Florus. And we never hear from Saul again. This is all told by Josephus in his Jewish Wars.
Can I ask you a question, brother? What do you think of? I mean, so I don't know where you are in Pauline authorship, but because I haven't watched, your videos, but do you believe that any of the authentic writings, or alleged authentic writings, do belong to Paul, or you don't believe Paul existed?
I think Paul existed because largely because of First Clement telling us about a pre-war Paul, but Clement seems to me, as I've stated multiple times recently, to be vastly ignorant of canonical Paul, and I think it's difficult to tell how much material was written by the original Paul. He seems to quote something resembling 1 Corinthians about Cephas, Apollos, so rival leaders of different parties. Clement talks about that. So something resembling 1 Corinthians goes back to the original Paul. I suspect it's nowhere near the size of our canonical 1 Corinthians.
Do you believe that Paul wrote 1st and 2nd Corinthians?
I don't think he wrote 1 Corinthians as we have it. Rather, he wrote something resembling 2 Corinthians. I don't know. I don't think he wrote our 2 Corinthians.
And revisions
in the redacted work, I guess.
Clement talks about a single letter by the original Paul. That's all he says. A letter by Paul. He doesn't ever mention his co-authors either. Timothy, Silas, Sophanes, Tertius, all these names.
Clement doesn't really speak a lot about Paul to begin with. I mean, he mentions him, but it's not like there's a large discourse on, what he's done. At least that's to my remembrance. I guess the reason why I was asking about if you believe in any of the authentic letters, so-called authentic letters, and if Paul wrote it, and I was going to mention the early, what's called, the early creedal statements that's found in Paul, or the kind of the poetic or the homilies or different texts that doesn't seem to derive from Paul, but maybe precedes Paul as far as tradition. Do you believe any of those existed?
Well, there could be some evidence of that. Like I don't think I do think some literature predates Paul.
Well, within his writings. Anyway, I say that to say.
Well, I'll give you an example, like the Gospel of the Hebrews, which has a story of Jesus's appearance before James. We see that this story is related in 1 Corinthians 15, I believe is where it is, where Jesus has an appearance before James after he appears to Cephas and the 500. And the story of Jesus' appearance to James is quoted from the Hebrew Gospel by the Church Fathers, which I think does predate the letters of Paul. Rather, all of them are authentic or not to the original Paul. I think it's before them. And we see that in 1 Corinthians, it's saying that it's quoting this material from Scripture, from a written document, when it's talking about Jesus' appearance before James. So there's because you see this phrase, according to the Scriptures, a few times in Paul's letters, several times in Paul's letters. It's suggestive that it's quoting an older document or document.
Yeah, and whether it's that older document can be maybe traced back to an oral tradition. I guess the point of saying that, and even Philippians 2 is like a creedal homily or statement, or I forget how they phrase it, but there's quite a few, like Gary Habermas. I think you had someone on that tried to refute the minimal facts, his position. But there's, I think it was maybe a couple months ago.
We'll get the exact title of the episode. That was Michael Alter. It was titled The Fabricated Resurrection, The Minimal Facts Debunked. That's the title of that episode.
Okay, yeah. But it's interesting. They're all creedal statements in throughout this, what we call Paul's authentic letters, that, you know, you have Bart Ehrman, and maybe, I don't know if you agree with what he has to say, but, you know, German scholar Ulrich Wilkins, James Dunn. Anyway, they could trace a lot of these oral traditions or these creedal statements to within a few years of the birth, if you want to call it the birth of the church. And they all stem from Jerusalem. But I say that to say that to me can sort of validate that something rose out of the Jerusalem church, namely that this.
I don't have a problem with that. I think there's some truth to that. And again, that's why I brought up the Gospel of the Hebrews. I think so. I do think there's some truth to that. How much of it would be possibly debatable, but yes, I do think that. I typically think that in the Pauline epistles, when it's talking about quoting from scriptures, it's aware of an older document or documents that is being quoted, regardless, irrespective of the dating of the epistles. So I can agree with that.
Yeah. Anyway, that keeps me holding on to, you know, I don't even know if what you make of the kind of idea. Well, if you then trace back the creedal statements and some of the oral traditions, maybe the Q document. Well, it's getting late. I think I forgot my thought. But what was my thought? Sorry, it's like 2:30, almost 2:30.
That's all right.
Early creedal statements. Yeah, I forgot my thought. I apologize. But yeah, anyway, it validates some sort of historical kernel that there may have been this Jesus figure.
No, I think there was a historical Jesus. I don't dispute that.
Yeah.
I think a historical, in my mind, I don't think it matters if Paul wrote the letters or not. I think that I'm kind of tired of the debates, historicist versus mythicist debates, depending and centering around Paul. So considering that Paul never met Jesus, as far as we know,
Right.
So to me, it's kind of ridiculous. I don't think a historical Jesus depends on Paul's letters. I'm quite certain there was a historical Jesus. I'm not skeptical of that.
Yeah.
I've never been a mythicist, but I think the evidence for historical Jesus is enormous, even outside of Paul's letters. I mean, I remember saying recently that even if all we had was Tacitus's annals and that was it, let's pretend that all the other references to Jesus were never recovered, and all we had was just Tacitus talking about a guy called Christus who was crucified, or Crestus who was crucified under Pontius Pilate. I'd have no problem believing that, because what I don't like about those debates is that, oh, we have no contemporary evidence for historical Jesus. Well, actually, I would disagree. If the Gospel of Hebrews is as early as I think it is, and also, of course, the creedal statements that we were just talking about are also early. Some of that material, which is in the Hebrew Gospel, that's why I brought up the resurrection, Jesus' appearance to James in the story, in an alleged post-resurrection appearance. So I think that those texts are early. I mean, as early as the AD 30s. I don't have a problem with that being really early. But even if the church fathers ever told us about the Hebrew gospel at all, and all that other stuff, and we didn't have the creedal statements, and none of that stuff survived, and all we had was just Tacitus, I would have no problem with it. But because if we say we don't have contemporary evidence for Jesus, therefore he didn't exist, then my response will be, well, what about Judas the Galilean? We have no contemporary evidence for Judas the Galilean, but Josephus mentions Judas the Galilean, but Josephus wrote 60 years later. He was not a contemporary of Judas the Galilean. Josephus was born 30 plus years after Judas the Galilean's death. Does that mean Judas the Galilean didn't exist? Of course not.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I rest my case on that there.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah.
What do you
up,
make
you
of
guys?
Paul's eschatology? What I find interesting is that Paul, he seems to believe that there was coming distress that would, encompass both Jews and the Roman Empire. There is a verse in Romans 11 tied to some idea that Jesus was going to return in the form of judgment, but that could trace back to an early belief that Jesus, was an apocalyptic preacher and that he did preach about,
My problem is, I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, you're good, brother. Just mumbling.
My brief response to this is my problem is this 1 Thessalonians 2:14-16. Now, this has been these verses I'm talking about have been such a big issue that some Pauline scholars will claim that this is an interpolation. They don't have any manuscript evidence to support this assertion. Now, some scholars take the position of Marcionite priority, or the priority of Marcion's edition of Paul. And I've interviewed such scholars on my channel. I don't currently agree with that position, but I think it's intriguing, but I don't agree with that position. If you go at that position, then parts of 1 Thessalonians 2:14-16 would be inauthentic, but most of it, or at least a large part of it, would still be authentic. And really the big issue would really have to do with the wrath of God in 1 Thessalonians 2:16, because that's really where, like, the chunk of that's missing. 1 Thessalonians 2:16 in the canonical text talks about the wrath of God coming upon the Judeans for what they had done to Jesus. So we read all 1 Thessalonians 2:14-16. The wrath of God came upon the Judeans for what they had done to Jesus. And some scholars interpret it that this is a post-AD 70 composition. But if this is the case, you would have two choices then. Either those verses were inserted into the text, or you would have to think that the entire letter was written after AD 70. I go with the latter, but the whole thing is after AD 70.
So you don't think it's authentic?
So I think the individual that Jerome was talking about, Saul of Giscala, wrote the text. The guy that was pretending, one of the guys pretending to be Paul.
What about maybe an authentic Thessalonians, but redacted it, or just interpolated, or?
I mean, I guess it's possible, but I don't know what that would have looked like.
Yeah,
I'm just going to put it that way.
Got it. Well, anyone else have any questions for the esteemed Mr. Jacob Berman?
I'm definitely not familiar with your work, man. I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, I do. I just want to. I am. I'm sorry to interrupt you there, Nick. This is me. Yeah, Jacob. I just want to really quick, while I have a chance. I'll probably never get a chance to talk to you again either. I got a chance to tell Derek this earlier, which was a pleasant surprise. But I watch your channel every now and again. I don't know if you recognize my name because you have so many people, but I'm kind of unique.
I remember you in the comments.
Yeah, I just want to say I really, really respect the fact that you've got Dr. Price back on. Really appreciate you guys sticking by him. You know, I don't get into all the politics. I'm an independent centrist, so I don't line myself up with extreme politics on either side of the fence. And I know there was a lot of drama around that, and it was all based on politics.
Oh yeah.
So, So I just really, I want to give a shout out to the guys who stuck by him. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, he's a human being, and not only that, but he's an incredible scholar. He's got so much to offer the scholarship. I mean, if I remember, he's got 2 PhDs in biblical studies. So. Yeah, he's the guy's a savage, you know. But anyway, so I just, like I said, just a rare opportunity to get a chance to say hello to you, and I do like your work. I've enjoyed Valiant. I enjoy seeing him on your channel a lot, and wish you guys all the best.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and of course, I wish you the best as well. And thank you for your support for my channel.
Very good, brother. Sorry, Nick, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Did you want to? Is Nick still around?
No, yeah, I was just going to say. Yeah, I'm not.
What's up, you guys?
Familiar.
Hey, listen. First and foremost, thank you guys for chiming in all of this in this discussion. You guys have. I listen. I'm in the West Coast. I'm in California. I'm a little tired. I'm being quite honest with you. You know, I've been preparing for this debate. I'm pretty drained. I got so many people hitting me up. People. I have literally people cussing at me, and stuff like that. So I'm just
Like
responding
who?
to that.
Who's cussing at you?
I don't even know who they are. They're hitting me up on Facebook. I'm like, who are you? So at the end of the day, it is what it is. But man, you guys are good sports. I mean, I know you guys are ahead in the time zones. But yeah, I mean, this is very important stuff, you guys. What can I say? I know that we're all sincere in our approach. I know that we may disagree on certain conclusions, but at the end of the day, life is a journey, and so what can I say? Thank you guys for chiming in. Jacob, what's up, man? How'd you think of the debate?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting, and quite intense, from what I saw. Um, and it to me it shows that preterism really struggles with, well, part of I've already stated earlier, the different kinds of eschatology in the New Testament, and to try to explain all of that away is very difficult because I'll give an example. Some Christians will talk about hell in the New Testament. Well, you have a hell mentioned in Matthew. Well, really, it's the lake of fire. It's not called hell, but lake of fire. But the lake of fire described in Matthew and the lake of fire described in Revelation is similar to how people imagine hell today. In the Gospel of Matthew, it talks about if you don't feed the homeless and give drink to them, you will be thrown into the lake of fire forever. In the book of Revelation, on the other hand, it says something different. It says, if you do not believe, if you don't have faith in Jesus, you will go into the lake of fire forever. So I'm giving this as an example in which, okay, which one got it right? Did Matthew get it right, or did Revelation get it right? Or do you do both and assume that stuff goes together? I suppose if I were a believer, I guess I would do both. Not obviously believe, but also do what Matthew was saying, because I'd be really scared to get.
Revelation, real quick, Jacob. Revelation does, in Revelation 22, it does depict people's identity based on their behavior. In other words, the whoremongers, the murderers, the liars, and they'll go into the lake of fire if they don't. So there is a component of action, not just belief in Revelation.
Yes, but basically what I was trying to point out, thank you, what I was trying to point out is that in Matthew, it doesn't talk about, not that I remember, it doesn't talk about specifically faith alone will prevent you from going into the lake of fire. That's really what I meant to say. So
I don't think Revelation has a.
I'm talking about Matthew. I'm talking.
Oh, and Matthew, yeah. Well, anyway, and
that's okay.
I don't mean to be contentious or anything. So.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Don't worry about it. So
there's certainly a kaleidoscope of different pictures of all these concepts. The resurrection and hellfire and eschatology and soteriology. So I'm not going to deny that. So.
Okay, fair enough. And that, to me, I think some try to say that parts of Revelation are older. There's a proto-revelation that some have speculated. I think some even claim that there was a Hebrew version of Revelation that's older. I don't buy that. I don't think the evidence of that's particularly strong. But the arguments are interesting. I just don't accept it.
I've never heard that before, actually.
Yeah, it's not a very well-known position.
So a friend of mine, Dallas, from Better Understanding the Bible, thinks that Revelation was the first book of the New Testament ever written, and that it was passed around to like the churches and to Christians, and that they've been reading that as part of like their liturgy, like from the beginning. I didn't really hear like his evidence for that, besides that like Paul and Peter were like pulling from it in different parts. But he's the first and only person I've ever heard throw that out, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Just thought I'd share.
Yeah, I think I've heard of that before. Actually, I think there's a mythicist out there that tried saying the Revelation was, or the Gospel of John was first, something like that. But I don't exactly remember the position. It didn't make any sense to me. I don't think Revelation is the first book. That doesn't make sense to me. To me, I think Revelation is developing the eschatology. It's much more developed in Revelation than it is in the other text. It's like it's blending the different eschatologies together in this very apocalyptic text. And so I would say Revelation would make more sense as being at least later than the synoptic gospels, later than Paul's letters as well, since I think Paul's letters predate the gospels. So I think Revelation is just simply aware of them and combining the different kinds of eschatology from the Pauline epistles and the gospels together in Revelation. So I think Revelation is simply developing the story, and that's why Revelation, I didn't quite put it the right way earlier, but what I was trying to say is that Revelation is incorporating what Matthew is saying and developing on top of it about how to avoid going into the lake of fire. That's which brings me back to my original point. Do you do what only Matthew says, or do you do what Revelation tells you to do on top of Matthew to avoid going into the lake of fire?
Well, both Matthew and Revelation have a focal point of Christ, like
action.
At least I'm saying both have a foundation of faith.
Yeah.
In Matthew, obviously following Jesus, right, is isn't that the epitome of sort of what it means to be like Jesus? What text is that actually? If you don't,
I don't remember right now. And
Jesus is like, if you don't do the things that I say, right, I'll say to you, I never knew you. But he's portraying himself as Lord. In other words, if you read the text, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do the things that I say? So there's a calling him as Lord, but also doing the things that he says. And Revelation is being washed in the blood of the Lamb, aka faith. And then obviously there is the moral actions as well, if you go to Revelation 22. So I see both components in both Matthew and Revelation.
Well, it's kind of like that issue when you look at, I believe it's in 1 Thessalonians. And if I'm screwing up, I'm getting tired. I know we're all getting tired here. But so excuse me if I do. But first, this is the last point I'll bring up before I head off. But in 1 Thessalonians or somewhere else, but it's in the epistle somewhere, there's this notion that, okay, the imminent return of Jesus, it's like it's coming. It's very, very soon. Don't get married. Don't have children. Don't worry about any of that stuff because Jesus is coming back. You can't. This is not a good time to have a family because Jesus is going to be.
That's in Corinthians, right?
Yeah, like I said, I couldn't exactly remember where it was. I know it's in one of the letters.
Yeah, no, it's
First. I probably misremembered which one it's in. Regardless, it's in one of them. And
1 Corinthians 7, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so on 1 Corinthians, that's where it is. It says this. And so then you get to the pastoral epistles, 1, 2 Timothy, and Titus, which is giving instructions about church order and organization. You also kind of see this in Philippians, in the beginning of Philippians. And in 1 Timothy, it's talking about not having women talk in church. They should be silent in churches. You also see this in 1 Corinthians as well, about women being silent in churches. So I'm like, wait a minute, which is it? Are we going to give rules of church organization, like as if we're setting up church organization because we're not really sure Jesus' return is imminent? Or is Jesus' return imminent and we shouldn't be bothering with all this stuff? And so that's just something else that I have a problem with in terms of, is the eschatology consistent, or is there evidence among the letters that there were different viewpoints creeping in? And this is the other thing I was trying to bring up. I brought up several times over the years, and that is when you look at the letters, 8 out of 13 of them attributed to Paul are claimed to be multi-authored text. Now, people will say, oh, they'll dismiss for co-authors as nobodies or just scribes. No, they're more than that. If you look at the beginning of 1 Thessalonians, it's Paul, Silas, and Timothy writing to the Thessalonians together. It's again, you see this in 2 Thessalonians, where all three of them are writing another letter to the Thessalonians, or they're writing this letter with this other person claiming to be Paul. And in 1 Corinthians, you have Paul and Sophanes. In 2 Corinthians, you have Paul and Timothy. In Philemon, you have Paul and Timothy. In Philippians, you have Paul and Timothy. And then it's pretty much like that in all the other, and most of the other letters, like in like Colossians and so on. Romans, it puts Paul and Tertius, but Tertius doesn't appear in the letter until Romans 16. The only letters that are not co-authored is Galatians, Ephesians, 1, 2 Timothy, and Titus. All the other ones are claiming to be multi-authored text. And, scholars like Robert Price point out the contradictions, the tensions in the text, different styles of writing. Bart Ehrman talk about different styles of writing, different theologies in the text. This is a widely discussed thing in scholarship, that there's different styles of writing. Well, if the texts are multi-authored, as they're claiming to be, in my view, 8 out of the 13 of them at least, that can explain that, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, the easiest way to reconcile it is that if Paul considers authentic letters, obviously he has a particular eschatological view, point of imminency, but if you consider his pastoral epistles as pseudepigraphical, they come later, well then, wouldn't that sort of reconcile that? I mean, it doesn't help the conservative Christian, but at least that gives some explanation as to the shift.
I see, from my point of view, I see the same person that has taken over Paul's identity in the late 1st century as working with these people in these letters. I don't think Timothy, Silas, and Sophanes and Tertius were working with the original Paul. And this, to me, would explain why Clement never mentions them, because they did not contribute, nor were they involved in any way in the creation of the text. They were not involved with the original Paul the Apostle. They weren't part of that story originally.
Right, right. Well, wouldn't that explain the difference in eschatology? Or
yeah, to an extent, I do think that the original Paul did engage in some eschatology, but not quite in such a detailed way like the canonical Paul and his co-authors did. Those people are engaging in a much more complex literary situation and eschatology. They are writing after the destruction of the temple. There's a 4th century text called the Acts of Timothy, which claims to be written by Polycrates of Ephesus. Polycrates was a bishop of Ephesus in the late 2nd century. The Acts of Timothy claims that Timothy died at the end of Emperor Domitian's reign. And this is an example of things that I'm talking about, where you have these very strange texts. I'm not saying, I don't think the texts are strange, but they would be strange to someone who's taking the standard chronology. If that's the problem. That, okay, so how do we explain the Acts of Timothy, believing that Timothy died in Domitian's reign? Now, the Acts of Timothy does talk about Paul's death under Nero, but we have to remember that they're getting the story of Paul's death under Nero from the Acts of Paul, a late 2nd century text. And the Acts of Paul was copying Josephus about a Saul who was brought before Emperor Nero. And this Saul isn't Paul, but it's a different person, but they're using his character to mythologize and elaborate on Paul's life. I'll give an example. Acts has a contradictory story about Paul's flight from Damascus. In Acts, Paul flees from Jews. He's fleeing from Damascus from Jews. But in 2 Corinthians, Paul's fleeing from King Aretas, not Jews. when he's fleeing from Damascus. He's fleeing from King Aretas. There's a 30-year discrepancy there when looking at Acts. And when you look at Josephus, Saul, the Saul that Josephus is talking about, was fleeing from Jews in AD 66 at the start of the Jewish War. So Acts was lifting the story from the Saul in Josephus and applying this to Paul. So the way I look at Acts is like it's like a reboot of Paul, so to speak. It's a reboot. Like, okay, this is the new story. It's like somebody, and I want to be careful how I phrase this, I don't think Paul's fictional. I think he existed with certainty. But for lack of a better analogy, I'm just going to throw in science fiction. If somebody were to do a reboot of a science fiction show, you can move the characters to a different century, you can change details about them, and you can largely ignore the earlier work. Acts is ignoring the details in the epistles, a lot of it, in order to favor its reboot story. In Acts, it talks about the epistle of James, which in the New Testament, there is a letter of James. But it won't talk about the letters of Paul. So it has no problem talking about a letter attributed to James, which is in our New Testament. But it won't talk about Paul's letters. That's strange. But then, if we take all of Acts' history, let's pretend all of Acts' history real quick, which, by the way, I pretty much dismiss almost all of Acts as history. I think it's pretty much fiction. But when you look at, if you were to say all of Acts' history, if you were to look at it that way, then you would have to believe that Paul had encountered Roman proconsuls and governors. Like, he was a big shot. He was going to town with these people, hanging out with these people. And this all just, none of Josephus isn't aware of any of this. Josephus talks about a lot of people, both very important and non-important people in his text. And Josephus never talks about Paul. He'll talk about Jesus. He'll talk about James, that was supposedly Jesus' brother. He'll talk about John the Baptist. But he doesn't talk about Paul and his churches that are set up all over the place. The several shipwrecks he claimed to be in. 2 Corinthians, Paul says he had 3 shipwrecks, or in Acts he has 1 at the Adriatic Sea. And so it's a strange thing. Now, some people will say, well, why would you expect Josephus to mention Paul? Or he mentioned the Jesus and a James that's supposedly his brother and a John the Baptist. But not Paul. Not Paul, who supposedly had contact with all these major governors and consuls. Well, not every single one, but several of them.
Right. Some people think he was maybe a Herodian. Have you ever looked at Colin Hemmer's work on Luke? Or
say that name again.
Colin Hemmer.
No, I don't believe I know that name.
Anyway, Colin Hemmer. I guess he's I don't know what he is, but maybe an expert on Lucan literature. But he was impressed by the historicity, I guess you could say, or a lot of the. I think he mentions like 32 countries, 54 cities, 9 islands, 95 people by name, and 62, not named elsewhere. And he's giving topography and geography, and he's just spot on so many details of that kind of first century world. But anyway, he holds to more of Luke being authentic. There is some mythos involved, but he doesn't totally disregard it as not. There's no historical probative value, I guess you could say. But anyway, that's Colin Hemmer. He did some work on Luke Acts.
All right.
I got a question. Say you're correct with all this stuff, Jacob. Well, and what do you think the concluding point is to all this. Like, why are they faking all this stuff with Paul? Like, what's the gain? Like, what's the end game goal with this? I guess is what I'm asking. And before you answer, I think Truth and Telos, I think that's Professing Preterist who's done like a lot of debates. I think he changed his name. If that is you, bro, I really appreciated a lot of your debates. I'm pretty sure that is you. But yeah, go ahead, Jacob.
Well, the answer to your question, I think, is simple. They had to update Paul's theology to match for current era. They needed to use Paul as an authority to correct issues in the church, harmonize positions, and bring those positions and different viewpoints together. You kind of see this in Galatians. I believe it's in Galatians where it talks about we're all in Christ, basically regardless of the viewpoints. Are you slave, Greek, Jew, or this or that, regardless of who you are.
There's no ethnicity. There's no class status. Yeah, we're all one in Christ.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
Yeah, so it's trying to blend different viewpoints and groups of people together in harmony under Christ. In the same way that I think these co-authors are working together with their different points of view. It's a co-authored anthology, and they're sharing their viewpoints together. And the contradictions don't really matter to these people as long as everyone understands the point that they are under Christ. That they're all in this together, regardless of the issues. And that's the point being stressed, I think, much of the time in these texts, that they're trying to bring these viewpoints together.
Which is pretty radical, actually, coming from you would call it a Jew. Some people, I think maybe Luke may have used Acts as an apologetic for Gentile inclusion. I don't know if you've considered that scholarly point, but anyway, go ahead.
Well, I think I'm going to go ahead and head off. I just wanted to hop on for a little bit.
Always a pleasure, man.
Yeah, thanks, Jacob.
Appreciate people sharper than myself.
Yeah, I'm going to check out some of your stuff.
Yeah, it's called History Valley on YouTube.
Oh, yeah, man.
Jacob, it was great to touch base with you for the first time. Great to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. All right, thank you all. Good night.
Thank you, guys. I'm checking out too, you guys. It's late. I got class tomorrow, so at the end of the day, you guys, much love to each and every one.
Come on, you're such a lightweight, Tristan.
Oh man, what can I say? What can I say? Hey, look, at the end of the day, I debated Don Preston. I did my best, you know.
Dude, that's your bucket list. You
listen,
achieved a main goal in life.
Hey, look, he didn't own it, you guys. I asked him, are you going to finally own this? Like, are you going to own it or are you going to relinquish it? And he didn't answer it, and rightfully so. You know,
you should mail him that.
Like I stated, look, Tim LaHaye, he owned it. He was making millions off of this. The rapture imagery, clothes left behind, cars crashing into one another. Don challenges that literally in his books, and he says that I'm ridiculing him. Look at what he's doing to the dispensationalists. Isn't this funny? So instead of this, it's this. You see the similarities here? They're not getting caught up into heaven. They're staying here dancing in the streets when their damn wife and kids is being brutally tortured and murdered. And so Don is over here stating that, well, even if my wife was in there, I'd still be rejoicing. That's even worse than the dancing in the streets. But that is what his version of full preterism teaches. And so it's absolutely unacceptable. Like I said, you guys, I compared it to 9/11 when the Muslims were over there rejoicing because Allah vindicated them and brought judgment on them. On Americans, and the cameras are on them. Look at these guys. They're clapping, smiles on their faces. That is exactly what Don teaches. And you guys, go back to the debate. I asked him like at least 3-4 times, are you going to own this or are you going to relinquish it? Which one? He didn't want to do it because that's what you call getting a man cornered. The only reason why, you guys, I even landed this debate was because I got Don to state that. This whole dancing in the streets and this whole experiential factor. Nobody has criticized Don the way that I have. And so at the end of the day, that's what landed me the debate. And he had told me before the debate, he doesn't want me bringing it up. I kid you not. When him and I were talking with Derek, he stated, we are not going to talk about the dancing in the streets. He brought it up in the debate. I said, yeah, right. You're for sure I'm going to talk about that. You don't want me to talk about it. But again, you guys, he stated this in his debate with Richard Carrier. He stated he was real sure. And then when I asked him, are you going to own it or relinquish it? He didn't want to do that. And he says that I'm not being exegetical. Yeah, right. I'm getting into the practicalities of the change to immortality, 1 Corinthians 15, and the meeting with Christ in the air with the dead, 1 Thessalonians 4. And so at the end of the day, you guys, thank you for tuning into the debate. Thank you for being on.
I would have doubled down on dancing in the streets. Because there's actually a verse that talks about dancing. It's a picture of Israel's restoration.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to say. Don, just own it. That's what I'm trying to say. Like in Revelation, the judgment of the harlot, all that, they're all with vials and timbers. That's what I said. Every nation, all tribes, kindreds, tongues, and people, what were they doing? You know what I'm saying? Like they're hundreds of miles away from Jerusalem. How did they even know that the Jerusalem temple fell? So at the end of the day, I mean, look, people in Don's camp are going to be like,
I could have engaged in that. But, like you said, you have respect for Don, and he's done a lot of work, and maybe he's getting to a point where he could pass the baton. I don't know. Maybe he's going to pass the baton to what's his name down there with the beard? I forget. Ryan?
Zach Davis?
No, you with the glasses. He's on the platform.
Oh, Nick.
Nick, sorry, Nick. I got it.
Yeah, me. No, I mean, I'm no debater.
Yeah, well, yeah, you know what? Like I said, you guys, I try to do my best. Thank you for tuning in. Daniel, you're more than welcome to come on the podcast, man. I got your email. Let's go ahead and set up a talk. Mike, you're more than welcome to on my podcast as well. And at the end of the day,
Daniel, I look forward to hearing you, seeing your full, your paper, your peer-reviewed paper on.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, brother.
Hey,
it was great meeting you, Michael. I really much respect, brother. I think the world needs more Christians like you. I'll just say it like that. If they're gonna be something, they need to be like you.
Yeah,
and Nick, it's always great to see
man.
you. Yeah. And Tristan, I always respect your time, family.
Oh man, thank you so much, man. It means a lot to me. And so at the end of the day, man, let's have a podcast. If all four of you guys want to come on and talk, I'm down for it. Just keep in touch.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, you got it, man. All right, family.
Much love to all you guys. Alrighty, bye-bye.
All right, night, guys.
Peace.